all right, the clap, we're in, we're early, we're straight onto things, and I just want everyone to make sure that they Shan Monese. I can't stop singing about Shan and Monese, Shan Monese Shan. There's just so much. It's going through my head. It's a jingle. It's always any song that I hear. It's an adaptation.
When are you going to put it to paper?
It needs to be done. I think I need Harry's musical genius, yet another big fan of the Shan Monese fan club. And I just think that like it would be, we could probably get it in the game. It would be a blockbuster hit. People would be lining up for hours to I guess get their CDs.
Tickets, yeah.
We're going to put it on CDs. I would say we want to put it on, or I think nobody really has cassette players. Actually, who the fuck has a CD player? Do any of you boys have a CD player?
I have one collecting dust. I don't have one in active use.
I like how you said that. I can just imagining you walking around with a disc man or something like, like, cranking this up. Like,
people,
I can't even imagine wired headphones anymore, like earphones. Like that was such a faffle. They would always.
Dude, I see them all the time though. Apparently, Yanko, the Zoomers, like the kids. I don't know if this is true, right?
Because I'm hearing this. It's a new hipster, isn't it? The
exactly.
Headphones, yeah.
But I'm hearing that from another. What are we?
We're millennials.
We're millennials.
We're millennials.
Jason is a boomer. But.
Well, I'm mentally I'm a boomer. No, but I think I don't know. We're like late into the millennials. Me and Chad. I don't know if Yanko missed the cutoff or not, but I assume you're millennial.
No, you must be a millennial.
Yeah, I'm like 92. Am I a millennial?
It's like Gen Y, then Gen
Early
Z.
1980s to the late 1990s.
Okay, born between 81 and 96. So there's a definitive...
Yeah, so you're a millennial.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, so we're from the same bracket.
I don't know. I'm from a generation where now that you're talking about like this or whatever, like the whole boy band sort of a culture,
Backstreet back, all right.
Yeah. It's like, what was really appealing about that to guys? Like,
well, it wasn't. It was for girls.
Well, I mean,
don't you think like these sexy dudes, like slick back hair, and they're all smooth, and they're doing. I don't think there's anything wrong with liking the music.
Second thing is, but if you wanted to be in a boy band, would that be because you wanted attention from girls? You want to be liked by girls?
Well, it depends, right? So, everybody wanted to be famous. Well, everybody still wants to be famous, apparently. But like back then, that was like with like all the TV and putting these projects together, and like you have these. They just throw like people who are good looking and talented together and whack a name on it and see if it sticks at the time.
That was like the first that was the first instance I know of like manufactured fame, right?
What the fuck, Google? I didn't talk to you.
Wow,
what?
Okay.
You've been acting up lately, Google, man.
Jesus, they're really creeping on you right now.
Oh dear.
Give it a good slap.
You're gonna get so many boy band advertisements in your social media now.
39 degrees outside, and Google's playing up. So I apologize. I want to apologize to everybody for that flare up. I will be punishing the thing that listens to me at all times later by making it listen to
what is Google's name? What's Google's name? Like, there's Alexa with Amazon.
Is it
just?
Don't make me do it because we'll activate everybody's devices.
Okay, Google.
Yeah, but there's not like actually a name to the AI.
Alexa?
No,
that's Amazon.
That's Amazon.
Yeah, no, but I'm going through them all. Siri?
Okay. Siri is...
If we're going to activate one person's, we may as well try and activate everybody's, right? I think Henry said that there was one like on the Samsung, like Bilby or something. I don't know. I've never used a Samsung cellular telephone device.
But Google obviously has
no
desire to like personify their AI to make everyone feel more comfortable.
Well, Google is essentially a god, right? Like the entity itself. It's a behemoth. It just kind of runs the internet. So I'm happy just like treating that entity like it owns everything. I guess it does. Why are we going down this dark path? I had good energy. I was singing Backstreet Boys.
if Microsoft like. They could do an easy one with AI or whatever, where because it's Bing and then it's just sarcastic all the time, like the character from Friends.
Chandler Bing. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Could have a bit of a shtick to it.
Who's your favorite Friends character?
I consider myself a bit of a Rachel. I don't know. Friends, I can't say I consume too much. I've consumed enough Friends, but I don't know if I have enough to go, this is definitively my favorite
so funny
character.
if it was taken out of context. It's like, I've consumed enough Friends.
Yeah, as the cannibal I am here. Let's get in favorite Disney movies, colors, zodiac signs. Gentlemen, today I went to the dentist, and I have a triumphant story about today. So this is the last week before we head out to Cologne and whatnot. And I'm like, okay, I should probably go get a checkup at the dentist. Like, once every 6 months, middle of the year seems like a good time. So of course I leave it until like the final week that we have after being, here for quite some time. And so I sent an email over the weekend when they're not going to reply, of course. They reply first thing Monday morning. So big plus to them. This is a good dentist. This is not promotion, but
Sure.
this is, just a chatty B thumbs up here. And then I replied and was like, yeah, that's good. They were going to put me in 11:30 today. And I was like, that's great. Yeah, I'd love that appointment. And then it was all good. And then they called me like a couple of hours later, and I never usually answer my phone, right? I was like, okay, well, this is weird. I just did this appointment. This is likely to be the dentist. It all kind of lined up. Answer the phone. They're like, hey, look, the cleaning that you wanted to do, because I wanted to check up in a cleaning. They're like, we don't have any people here to do the cleaning. So the dentist can see you for the checkup, but you have to come back another day or another time for the cleaning. And I was like, fucking hell. Like, whatever. I wanted to get it done. So I was like, I booked that for Wednesday. So I was going to go to that at 11:30, then tomorrow at 2:30. And I went in today, get it, 2:30. Fuck, I'm so happy that I booked that dent. I was going to make that joke tomorrow, but now I can't. That's sad. But the highlight here was the dentist who was doing the checkup. She was happy enough because she felt bad for me having to come back again tomorrow to do the cleaning today, gentlemen. So it's a massive win.
She went above
It's
and
a
beyond.
huge victory. I don't have to go to the dentist tomorrow. I had the checkup. I had the clean. And I just want to say a massive thumbs up. She didn't have to do that. She does the big stuff. She does the fillings. She does the dental surgery. She doesn't do the cleaning.
That's
but
like
for
10
me
minutes,
today,
no? 15 minutes.
yeah. But I'm.
Yeah. She didn't
I
have to
was
do
happy.
it.
Do you tip the dentist for
Oh,
adding
Jesus
that on?
Christ, here we go again.
I don't think so. Dentists are paid
Americans and
quite
their tip
well,
culture.
so I wouldn't imagine that I would be tipping the dentist.
Okay.
Do you tip at the drive-in, Jason?
The drive-in. What is this, like the 80s movies?
If you were
or something?
picking up McDonald's, no, through like the takeout drive-in, like drive through to pick it up and go.
No.
Well, you
so
will
that-
soon enough, I'm sure. You're gonna start tipping cops when they book you or something.
Yeah, it is
The
that
tip culture has gone insane in the
I mean,
US.
you guys tip cops. You just call it something a little bit different, don't you?
Whoa.
Wait. Cultural
Wait.
differences. No, but I like this. This is like a sort of, I have a full questionnaire for Chad out of the blue. So Chad, next things up, like, how did you pick your dentist? Because you're
So
like in
when
a
I-
foreign country, like, is it
Yeah.
just you go through Google reviews or how do you do it?
So with the dentist, no. When I was first moving here, there was a bloke that worked for Eden Entertainment, like who did that Supernova event and stuff. And I remember I had him on WhatsApp, and I was talking to him. He's a very nice guy. And I asked him, like, hey, do you have any recommendations for like a dentist? Is there any way that you'd go? And he recommended this place. So, and I did check it. Right, I looked it up on Google to see what it was like. It had good ratings. It looked like a good spot, and I go there. And so yeah, for the dentist, I had like someone give me a good review. For a doctor or whatever, I don't know. I've never been to the doctors here in Malta. I wouldn't.
Let's hope it
know.
stays that way.
Yeah, right. So there's certain things like a barber as well is really hard. Like a barber is a hard one. That's why I just like when I'm at home, like right now for these stints, I just don't get my hair cut, which is great because it's falling out. But like in the sense that you just let the mop grow. I'm full mop mode
I
right now.
got a nice
It's
haircut
out of control.
in Malta when we were there for Pro League.
Where did you go?
I think it was either Henry or Alex who told me. It was actually some Albanians running it. So I booked under the name Jason and I didn't say a word while I was there. But it was like, you remember that Vigi's restaurant where we went to? It's like,
Yeah.
It's like within 3 minutes walk from that place. Like before
Okay.
it. It's on that stretch.
Okay. That could be either a Henry or an Alex. I go to one that's like a drive away. Everyone kind of just takes their punt, and if you go in and you have a good one, and it's like, okay, you go back.
This was
You
like-
have a decent.
I had to book. They were pretty busy, but it was a really good haircut.
Yeah, well, that's what you're looking for. This is the thing. It's the job you want to get done at the end of the day.
Okay.
It's,
Chad,
Okay,
we continue with the question.
Oh yeah, so sorry,
not
yeah,
over.
my bad.
No, I've always wondered, like, so now you're basically living in a vacation spot to some extent. Is it like,
Yeah.
are you annoyed now that there's like so many people like during holiday season? Is it like obnoxious, or how is it like to live in
No,
that place actually? Because people always say, I mean, people who are not at the sea, I mean, you wouldn't know, you were in Perth before, I guess, but people are always like, if only I could have a house on the sea or the ocean or whatever, you know, like if only I could live there, everything would be like so much nicer.
Sure. So I guess I don't really notice it because I don't drive. So like I don't see or get interfered by the traffic, like picking up or whatever. And in terms of like the touristy hotspots, I wouldn't say I'm down there at peak times. Like if I go out for a walk and a swim, it's normally I'm getting up at 7 and I'm leaving the house by 7:30. So most people who are here on holiday and shit, they're not up that early. So you go out that early, you bang on down, you get down to the water. It's a beautiful time. The sun's just come up. There's very rarely lots of people out. It's usually seldom. You get like, I don't know, most of the spots I go to swim, maybe you get 5 or 6 other people in like a big area. So in terms of being bothered by tourists here, no. And I would imagine that they still look at me as a tourist. The only place that probably doesn't on this whole entire fucking island is the coffee shop I go to every day. That I've just been, going in and I just order the same thing every day, and I'm making a relationship with the gentleman behind the counter. He now knows my order, right? No
Sure.
questions now, and soon we can move on to maybe learning maybe each other's names. Or actually, no, before names, there's probably some other chit chat, like where he's from. I imagine that's probably next. So I don't know if that answers your question, Yanko, but yeah.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. That concludes today's questionnaire.
Okay, perfect.
Chad.
Absolutely.
Jason, do you have anything for me here about Malta that I could help you with?
No, I'm good. I think I've gotten all my questions out in previous seasons, so I'm just
Okay.
Maybe in the future, maybe something pops up.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And it's not my question. It is a viewer question that we got on our last episode that we did while Yanko was away. We had Rush come in and help us out for an early chunk of the show. But the question came in from a Bartek, and they were asking how our significant others deal with the amount of travel we need to do because of work, and how did it look at the beginning of our relationships. It's a very curious question. The travel is or can be a deciding factor that really determines how it's going to go.
You want to take this one first, Jason, as being as how you have a wife and a kid?
Yeah, Jason's life kind of worked out all right.
Yeah, mine. I don't know how that happened, but it did. Yeah, my significant other when we started dating, I mean, she's from Counter-Strike space, right? She competed and won world championships back in the day, so she understood the whole industry, and she was managing CLG Red at the time, so like she kind of understood. So that travel thing problem never really super popped up for me, and she was out in California and I was in Michigan, so like we weren't exactly like close by to begin with. So travel like never really mattered because we were always apart. It's harder now just because of the baby. But I mean, I think at a certain point they just got to understand and accept that there's a certain amount of events and you got to work out a good flow. I can't be disappearing for 6-7 weeks at a time the way I used to be able to. But yeah, we work through the travel, and it's tough at times, and she's got a couple tough weeks coming up with Cologne and a few other events after that. But yeah, I don't know. It just works out. We've made it happen, and now it's just kind of part of the relationship.
I think you find out though, right? Like, obviously there needs to be a bit of a give and a take from either side in these scenarios here, but that becomes like our default and our norm. And then I think with that, like if that's what you want to maintain, like if that's either equal priority or priority number one, then people can either I don't want to say deal with it, but that's kind of the boundaries of things.
There's some give and takes, right? Like as the relationship kind of got bigger and more serious and kept
more
growing.
Mature.
Yeah, you have to make some sacrifices too and say, okay, instead of going out with the guys tonight, maybe I wait an hour and I call home and have a chat for an hour. And
never happened.
Make sure you find times during the week to like call home and say hey and just check
Always
in
was
and
with the
check
guys,
out.
of course.
Yeah, always was with the guys. But I found that hour. I found that hour in various ways.
It was just you take that from your sleep.
Yeah, exactly. I just did it a little drunk at the end of the night before I go into sleep at 2 a.m. But yeah, I mean,
4
there's just give and takes when you have to do something like that.
I think though what's interesting is I realized as well recently, like it's been a long time that we've been doing this. So you've actually got so accustomed to being away, right? That you don't really, it's just your life. You're not really thinking about, oh, if I could be at home this week, there's this thing that's happening, or I'm missing like someone's birthday or some sort of a happening, gathering, get together, whatever it is. You just kind of, you're used to it. But then when you start dating someone, it's like for them, it could be pretty new, right? And then the fact that you're used to it may come off as like you don't really give a shit as much, which isn't a good thing. But I think in general, actually, I've had it like it was a problem in a couple of relationships where they really sort of couldn't go on because of it. But I think that's also when I was younger, or like also my girlfriends were also younger, so I think there's also a lack of understanding really for that's the job, and they were just like craving attention so much where you can't really give the same amount when you're not there, which comes off a little bit as immature too, which I guess it is. I've also found out that there was no way I could date someone who doesn't have like either a job or an occupation of some sorts, right? Like something to occupy them and their time, because otherwise you're their main occupation, and that's just not viable. Like, we are at an event, we have a good time, but we are there for work. Like we spend hours on day, working, watching games, talking about games, commentating, whatever it is. It's like, I can't really be having to focus on someone else during the day and like entertain them while I'm at work. Like that's just not really happening. But I'm lucky that now my girlfriend is very understanding, even though it's not easy for her. Like she would especially these stints where it's 5 weeks of pro league, and then usually there's an event like close either Katowice or Cologne, like so it's like 5 weeks and then just a week home and 2 more weeks somewhere else. But sometimes she can travel over, sometimes I can steal a day or two maybe to go back home just for a little bit. So it's good. And I think also living in Serbia, this job offers you just like a pretty comfortable lifestyle, and I think in today's day and age, that should most definitely not be underestimated. And it's a bit of a sacrifice in that department that you have to make, and for the better, for the greater good, as they say.
Yeah, we've touched so much on the negatives. It's not all negatives. That we've been able to. I know, like I brought Jane out for her birthday to Australia when we did Sydney the one year, and we rented the beach house. Flew her out to Madrid for her birthday like the next year when I was doing Blast, and she was in Paris with me for the majors just earlier this year for her first Mother's Day. So, I mean, the travel. Oh my Lord. The travel.
Is that a good or a bad? Is that a good or a bad squeal?
I don't know. Jane's on baby duty, so that I have no idea.
Okay, so if it's Jane squealing, it's probably bad.
If it's Jane squealing, it's probably bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, there are some good sides to it where you get to kind of bring them along to cool places that you travel to. But I think more than anything, I remember the first conversation that like we had to have, because I mean you get into some battles during this travel, right? Like in any relationship, you have some of those fights early on.
Well, you don't have to, Jason. You can just say I schedule Counter-Strike first and everything else. But when you have a kid, mate, I understand.
But I mean,
even
in like year 2, it was just kind of like, look, I have to travel a lot, so at a certain extent, like I need you to have there needs to be like some kind of like you need to have your own stuff. Like I'm not around to always,
Oh yeah, that's to what Yanko was saying, right?
Yeah. You need to be independent in your own way, and we make this happen when I can. I'm in grind mode, and I mean, you make it work. You make it work.
Yeah. It is what it is. I find when I'm home, like I have a lot of time, I can be very malleable, right? Like I can when I'm not at an event, but when I'm at an event, like I operate because of being away from home, like with a out of sight, out of mind mentality. I think because I don't think often about how infrequently I get to see my family, or I choose to see my family, right? Because that's also like a factor here. Like this is my choice to do this and be here and do this thing. So it's easier to just kind of shut off those thoughts, which is not healthy. I wouldn't imagine. It's probably better to fulfill that in a different way. But it's a good way to just keep the blinders on.
Yeah, no, I do the same thing to a certain extent, and it's rough, but like I mean, it does. I have like the same kind of strategy where like when I'm at events, like I'm at events, and like the nice thing about it is when I go home, it's not like a typical job where I have to work 6-7 hours a day and then kind of go home. When I'm home, I'm actually like home. Like you have that like
podcast.
Yeah, you have that hard distinction.
Stuff, so a bit more flexible. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a bit of an something that I didn't really think about when I started coaching too. It's like it's a massive difference because when you get back from an event,
you're
still working, right? Like
you're in the lab, bro.
You have practice, and then that can get after a while, depending on how many tournaments you have in a row or whatever, it can get pretty strenuous. Like you just need a couple of days off, and that's what eventually like we did. I did adjust our schedule where it's like we come back from a tournament. If there's like 2 weeks until the next one, it's like 2 days. There's no like practice or anything for the players, like, I mean, no practice for me either. But even if I'm like preparing some stuff, at least I have like 2 days where I can, just chill and sort of decompress. And then you start again with the routine.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. When you were playing, like when I was playing, you never had an off day, right? Like you would, especially when you were living overseas as a player, like you definitely never had an off day because what were you going to do on your off day? Like when we were living in Vegas and people like Justin and Aaron weren't 21 yet, it's like, well, we definitely aren't doing fucking anything, boys. So yeah, but I think like the lifestyle has so many pros. Like the parts of the world that we've gotten to see, and this was when we had Alex on and we were talking about Australia and all of that. Like we've done some really cool stuff before. I remember like Jason, didn't you and Trace go out to fucking the Great Wall of China or something? I should have fucking done it, man. What was I doing that was so important that I didn't go and do that? What was I doing?
A bus drive.
No, it was an Uber. It was an Uber.
It's like an OJ situation.
But the Uber we did leave like the hotel at like 6 in the morning or something like that. Like it was a super early departure because it was like an hour and a half, 2-hour drive to get out there.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to think what would I have been doing at an event that was more important.
You were probably in the sauna eating oranges with the other.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, we that was really cool, and I have some cool pictures from that. Me, Trace, and Matt all went out to the Great Wall for a day.
You did the 300 picture, huh?
Yeah, the one of him kicking me down the stairs. We climbed all the way. We like walked for like an hour along the wall, and then you get to a point where like the wall kind of like it has like a break in it that you can't pass. But what you do is you climb up these stairs to like the end of the line, and like the stairs were like actually legitimately like dangerous. Like they were almost like vertical cracked stairs. Some of them were small, some of them were huge, like relatively intimidating to go up and down. But when we got to the top of them, there was a fucking dude there with like one of those giant like to go food bags, like almost like a DoorDash bag, but it was just full of beer. He was just selling beer at the top of these fucking crazy ass stairs. So we just had a beer at the top of the Great Wall.
So kids, when you get to the top of the precarious stairs that haven't been maintained and looked quite dangerous, make sure you drink some alcohol.
You have a beer.
Have a cold one.
That's
set yourself up for
the
walk
Jason
back down.
Moses O'Toole stamp of approval right there. Just bang. You talk about like the. I sit there and I imagine like some guy, it's his job to go and do Great Wall of China fucking maintenance, right? He goes out there and he's like, they're not fixing the wall up, surely.
No.
Surely the wall is just like degrading and it is what it is.
I don't think the Huns are coming back.
Oh, it's also it's a huge wall. You got to have a lot of maintenance people to keep track of that wall.
That's why unemployment is low in China.
But I feel that, right? But when you're talking about it and you're out at this thing that's like a tourist thing, and I'm thinking here in Malta, like I've been to a bunch of different locations around the island. Like there's one spot, it's like Popeye's village, but on the other side of the village it's like this bay, right? And there's this big cliff, and there's signs that say like careful. this, that, and the other. But there's no barricades or anything. Like you can literally just go up to the edge of this fucking massive, sheer, steep cliff with just rocks below, anywhere around the island. Like that's just everywhere. And I think about that, and it's like I think people underestimate like when there's scenarios like that, just how quickly you could slip, especially here in Malta, man. Like I'm walking around all the time here. It's so hot, and everything is made out of, I assume, in this fucking limestone stuff that the island's made out of. It's so slippery. Like everything's slippery. Yeah. It would not even when it's wet. Like when it's hot, because it gets this sheen to it. I guess this just like that's why I've probably said this on the show before, but I'll say it again. It can never be forgotten. When you're out walking around in Malta, make sure you're wearing responsible footwear. It feels like a place you should be able to, get around in flip-flops, maybe a pair of Crocs. But mate, if you're going up or down some hills and it's slippery, you're going to be in for a rough day at the office. I'll tell you that much. A bit of a bruised tailbone, maybe a graze. We don't want any of that. You need to be keeping yourself happy and healthy.
I fucking hate Crocs. They're hideous.
You get headlights on your Crocs.
That's what Yanko took away from that.
They're hideous, man. It's one of those things where people will try to convince you that that's like cool or nice or they're super comfortable. I don't care. Like you can't be wearing those. Like, and now, I know, Jason. Now, like they've gone like the route where in those holes, like you can put badges or pins or whatever, and you can buy like those for like 500 a pop or like even more expensive. Yeah. Like so. People wear them as sort of like it's becoming a little bit like the Balenciaga thing, where it's like how ridiculous can we make something and people are still going to buy it because it's like this brand and it's popular and like it's a status symbol at that point. It's not like a nice piece of footwear.
Do you know the story about Crocs really quick?
No.
Is this the one that's floating around on the TikToks or the Instagrams that's from a movie, right?
It is from a movie. I didn't know it was on the TikToks and Instagrams. But like, did you ever see the movie Idiocracy? It was made by like Mike Judge, who did King of the Hill and like Beavis and Butthead. It was like a movie he made about how like a dystopian society of where everything has gotten so dumbed down and we've dumbed the population down so much over generations that idiots rule the world. Well, he wanted to find he was trying to find clothing that they would all wear in the future, like stupid people would really love in the future. And he had a really limited budget, so they went with like the startup shoe company that made cheap plastic shoes, and it turns out they were Crocs. And he thought they were too stupid looking and futuristic looking to ever become popular in real life, and that's why he used them for the movie, and now they're just fucking everywhere.
That's brilliant. Yep. That actually makes
we fulfilled the prophecy.
Sense.
No, but Yanko, I got to ask you some questions here about your Croc hatred. Right. So just I'm going to ask you places that you can or cannot wear Crocs, right? And you tell me yes or no.
Okay.
No. Okay. A movie theater.
No.
Shopping mall.
No.
Okay.
You can see where this is going, Chad. Under no circumstance.
What about the gym? What about the gym?
Hell no.
What about a public swimming pool? What about a public swimming pool?
No, just wear flip-flops.
What about in a public shower so you don't get foot fungus?
No, better to get foot fungus than be seen in those.
Oof.
Yeah, it's just not happening.
Okay, all right. I tried. I did try.
You did try. You tried really hard.
I gave it a crack, and apparently there's no way forward with the Croc discussion. That's fair enough. You know what? Good news. Actually, Yanko, how was your vacation?
It was nice. It was like didn't do anything crazy. We just were in a more quiet part of Mallorca, so it was just like chilling during the day.
So it was a vacation
nice.
And not tourism.
Yeah. I mean, in Mallorca, you are supposed to sort of rent a car, like drive, because there's nice beaches, but they're like a little bit secluded and in different parts of the island. But we were just too lazy for any of that. Like I didn't have it in me, so it was mostly just chilling, hitting a couple of nice restaurants in the evening, like enjoying the food and stuff, catching up on some
I think I went there once before.
That's it.
There's some nice places there. It's a good spot.
I think it was just a week, right? But I think you can organize something nice if you go like 10 days and then switch accommodation like halfway through, like go from one side to the other side, just so it's like easier for
Changing
you
up
to
the
get
scenery.
around those spots, and then it can be. I think you can get a lot more out of it. It just like for us at this point, like this was how we wanted to roll. So yeah, it was pretty cool. Nothing too crazy.
Yeah, I find that like
I still don't.
Yeah.
Sorry, I still like prefer Greece over Spain. I think.
Oh,
Yeah, I think it's like nicer the season. I think also I've become like, the thing with Spain is like every beach is a public beach in a way, right? Like you can't prohibit anyone to go somewhere. So even if there's like, let's say, a beach bar and they have their own things, I don't know, it's weird, like you can't have them on the beach. There's some rules that are like make it a little bit different than, for example, Greece, or I guess I don't know where else. So yeah, and I'm pretty spoiled at this point where it's like I can't be like putting a towel on the
bar on
sand
the
and
beach,
like bring
mate.
my own umbrella.
Go to the
right,
Philippines or something,
I'm pretty pale, like, so I get red really quickly, like in the strong sun, so I have to be in the shade.
Get you out to somewhere like Thailand. Get out there, mate. There's bars everywhere. I'll tell you, they'll be on the beach. They will, you won't have. I guess it's a bit longer of a flight, whereas Spain and Greece are kind of just around the corner. I got the blast stream on right now. I reckon Config's been out in the sun somewhere. He's glowing. He's definitely been up in his town in the summer.
Probably
people have been
Malta.
working on it. Well, I don't think. Well, why would he be in Malta?
I don't know. I was just making a joke about how I got kicked in Malta.
Yeah, see, I left you
Yeah,
wide
we
open.
definitely
for that,
haven't
Jason? Yeah,
Oh,
see?
run that one
Yeah.
into the ground.
Yeah. Yeah,
It was. I thought I'd bring it back. It was a throwback.
Fair enough. Yeah, but if you're going to bring it back, I'm going to make you back it up. Like, we can't be.
Listen,
yeah.
guys,
And I
it's
think-
8:45 in the morning. I haven't finished my first fucking coffee.
You probably still just have vibrance on, Chad.
I still have what on?
Vibrance on.
Oh yeah, I do. I do still have vibrance on, but it does look like compared to everybody else, right? Like, so I'm still using. I'm still using the vibrance.
I've turned
as
my
the chart.
vibrance down because I'm full on a CS2 player these days.
No, come on, Jason, man.
Mate, I don't have enough people to get CS:GO pugs going on, so me and Fifi just roll in CS2 at the end of the day.
Okay, so are you playing shorties, longies? What's the situation?
Shorties, mostly.
Okay.
It's not easy too. I think in NA we're waiting like 10 to 15 minutes to get a queue to pop. But they've just introduced Wingman now into CS2, so that should speed things up when we play later on today.
It's only overpass though. They haven't included Vertigo in the
True.
wingman situation for some reason. I'm not sure why.
It's not even in the competitive. Like, can you even matchmake it in CS2?
No,
No.
it is
It's
casual
casual.
and deathmatch.
Yeah,
Which
I
is
like
hopefully
that.
a
Has
sign of
started
it not
That
being
they've
in
just
the pool.
taken it out entirely. Yeah.
Well, that's the speculation, right? That the fact that if it's not being put in the competitive now, is it even going to be, play? But
Well, here's a
wouldn't
question,
it-
Chad. I got a question for you. If you have this piece of information about CS2 and you're a professional team, do you gamble on the idea that it's just been thrown into casual, that it won't be in the map pool come CS2's release, so you don't give it as
Nah,
much
I
love
don't
right
think.
now?
I don't think you think about it at all. I would imagine, right? Considering this transition, we're assuming is going to happen sometime this year, right? So right now we're already in July, so it has to happen sometime in the next, couple of months. So the map pool, it would be crazy to think that they would actually, maybe not. Like the biggest pushback that I have here to introducing a new map into the map pool is the fact that there's already so much other change, right? That by adding an entirely new map, is that an overload of change? Would it just
fuck
not be
that.
safer to go? Well,
Throw it
that's
in
where
there. Yeah.
that's where I'm leaning, right? And looking, I don't know. I'm just
Depends which
erring
map
on the
is
side of
in.
caution.
For it.
Yes, that's true.
If it's a
But
map that was
what would
played
you even
before.
speculate, right?
Yeah, no, it's hard. I have no idea how Cobble will look.
I don't think they'll do the thing where they like rent a map off somebody again, like they did before with
Cobble's is
Cash.
Cobble is theirs though, right? Yeah.
No, I know, but
Yeah,
but the
Cash
current
is-
version of Cobble, they'd have to rebuild it. It's dog tier right now.
But I did see FMP say that
Cash is
on
gonna be a
CS2
head-to-toe
will be a
remake.
head-to-toe remake.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but that doesn't, like, in terms of being in the game, like, if they're going to continue the way that they've gone, if you look at Anubis, they bought Anubis off the people who made it, off the mappers, right? So if FMP makes Cash again, will they go with the model that they had before, where I think like it was kind of like they were renting the map off of him?
Yeah.
Or will they
Bro,
go like, oh, we have to buy it?
I think they'd
sell
want
it?
to buy it. I think they're just going to buy all of them now. especially with the
that's the
Source
thing.
2
And then
engine.
it's, do they want to sell it? Because that's the thing. You're selling the map.
Wouldn't you
So-
want to though? Wouldn't that be the end
What?
goal
You're not like-
of the map maker?
This is
like to
my
have-
child.
Well, that's the thing, though. That's the thing. Like, but the going rate for the map, right? So, I don't know the figure, but I think at the time it was discussed that it was like bought for like $100,000 or something. I don't know.
I was
going
going to say 150 is what the number I remember, but I don't. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know the exact. I'm not certain even if that figure is public. But let's say it's around that. That seems like that's good money. But is like that the Valve now own that map forever. Like Anubis is now owned by Valve forever. And the reason for that, you'd want to own it if you're Valve because you want to do whatever the fuck you want with it, and you can update the map when you need to update it. Like you have actual employees that you can work on it. You're not relying on somebody else. To have the upkeep of the map. So it makes sense on why they want to own it.
And as a map maker, like it's not like there's another party out there like looking to buy a map for 100. Like take that payday.
But how does it work with like at the moment with? This is a thing I'd have to ask Rushley this, but I know like in past in like Wingman and stuff, the maps there are community made maps sometimes, right? Or actually quite often.
They have a couple special ones.
Yeah, so that's the thing. I wonder how it goes when those maps come in, like how those mappers, how the money's made there. So maybe they asked, I don't know.
A third the size, a third of the fee.
It'd be great to hear if there are any experts in this field to do with mapping and Counter-Strike and where Valve are leaning. So I suppose you'd have to be a bit of an insider to have any info. Let us know,
Yeah,
You can
slide into the DMs.
send a message on the Twitter sphere. People use we had a lot of people comment on the recent episode. We had over like 30 comments. It's kind of cool that people are in there. A lot of people were asking me to do the after everyday blast thing, and I thought about it after I'd said it on the show. I was like, mate, I'm fed up of hearing my fucking voice. There's no way. And then if I'm talking about that every day, what am I going to talk about?
Every day that's a busy schedule.
Exactly, but it would have been like more in detail, like more nerdy fucking macro Counter-Strike stuff, like not just so broad. But even then, I'm like, So maybe in the future, who knows? But right now, nah.
Yeah, I think there's some cool ways to do it. I think it'd be fun. I want to see like what all these new lineups, like since we're getting a glimpse of them at Blast, like it'd be fun to like go back after Cologne and see like what changes they've made over the span of like 2 tournaments, right? Like what adjustments have they made with these new lineups? Have they changed roles? Are they doing things a little bit differently?
You see this link? I'll whack it in chat. So Harry Nero, the guy who works for HLTV, he has this.
I saw he had a sick
document
graphic
here.
on Twitter the other day.
So check this out, right? So this is what, like, when I would do my prep for games or whatever, or matches and going in, and I wanted to check, I would like manually go in. I'd watch a couple of like demos, or I'd use Shadow GG to like scrub through to see where players play and be like, okay, yeah, this is the general setup. This is what they're gonna do. Like he has this that he updates. So like he's updated this to the stuff that you've seen happen in the matches with the teams who are playing now. He's got both for like the way that they approach the T and the CT side. Now, look, some of the definitions you may define things differently, or you may use different terms, or whatever. But just in terms of general for CT positions and stuff, this guy's he's got it on tap.
He's got it for T side as well. He's got it for both.
Yeah, so it's like that's a nice little resource here that he's putting out there. That's pretty cool, I thought.
Yeah, dude, and this is like all the players too. Like you can scroll in this. It's not just the top 30. That's fucking mental.
It's kind of fun, but I don't even know what would. Yeah,
New overpass though looks sick. Talks about vertical.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Not in the map pool, but overpass looks really nice.
I feel like the movement is feeling better and better every time I play. But like, there's even the audio. So audio when we were playing Nuke was fucking dog shit. But when I was playing Overpass, which has some areas which is like through walls or like on like different elevations and stuff, I felt that the audio was easier to identify. And the same as Vertigo. Like we played some casual of that last night because when it popped, we couldn't queue together. It kept crashing the game when we tried to lobby up initially. So we just queued casual and got into the same game and we're running around. And I thought that I obviously didn't test it anything crazy, but yeah, like it feels like every time there's consistent updates being added. Like this one game, Wingman being added, who cares? Like that for us means nothing for the competitive side of things and the feel of the game. What else have we got here? I added the secondary fire hold option to the input settings menu. I'd have to investigate that exactly. Yeah, but there's nothing here. Like there's nothing here that says that they tweaked this or they did this. So I'm curious if things do actually feel different, or is it just my head? Like, this is one of the things, like, how do we measure these type of changes? And I'm definitely not smart enough. Or actually, maybe I just, don't want to do it. Maybe I don't want to measure it.
Maybe today's the day. Maybe when this podcast is done,
there.
you get in there and you actually get it done. You feel like a surge of motivation.
Do the one-to-one comparisons.
Sure.
See what they're looking like. I know that Rushley goes out there and he like clips stuff immediately. He's so hungry for all the interactions, this guy. So maybe he'll put some good content out for Overpass. What do you think of because Yanko, we essentially saw, it didn't look exactly like this. It looked mainly like this, right, Jason, when we got to play it? Because this was one of, what do you think, Yanko, of the map when you see it?
Of Overpass?
Yeah.
I mean, it looks great. If that's what you mean, just like visually, because I didn't get I didn't get in game yet.
Yeah, there's some new angles and stuff that exist in the game. So there's like different props. There's also some stuff which I don't know if it should bug me, but it kind of bugs me. And I saw it was on Reddit and stuff, and it bugged a couple of people as well. There's like certain props around the map that are in areas that look like you should be able to jump on them, but you can't jump on them. And then it's like, well, should it even be there? Because then essentially it's just this like misleading decoration. But then it's like, well, is it just like anything else? Like we'll just get used to it over time. Like, is it really that big of a deal? So people were complaining at Long. You know how you do the bench to the flower pot jump? People are like, oh, you can't do that anymore. But they've added in front of the flower pot this thing so you can just like do a crouch jump to get up there. So you can still get up there. The position is still usable. It's still you just
do it a little differently.
I would say slightly easier, but
I like
differently.
I couldn't remember if they had this when we tested it in January, but out towards Long now, they like have different materials on the ground when you're coming up to a bomb site as T. So
it's more wooden.
Yeah,
when it gets
so you
closer
can
towards the site. Yeah,
track by audio how close they are by like if you hear the wood sound or the concrete sound.
There's a lot of trees and poles deep Long, right? Like if you're coming up from the T side, right? Like you've got that first rock, and then to the left, there's a lot more trees and poles, and obviously they're not like the best cover in the world, right? You can get shot through them, and they're like, but to actually be able to go from like tree to pole as you work up Long, like you kind of have some cheeky cover that if they did bang a shot and it went through the pole into your head, maybe you don't go down. Like I saw that. I was like, because Long at the moment, you're scaling up, it's so open other than the two rocks in the tree. This is really, really thin cover, but it's just like, it's still better than nothing.
It's enough to give you a chance. It's like American Gladiators. It's like the Eliminator. You got to traverse the whole fucking way.
You take it over not having anything, right? So there's over towards B. Yanko, that angle near shore if you're a CT. And there's kind of those garbage bags, and you like kind of pop up and down, and people sit on that off angle and look monster, but you can also get them as they scale out like short in front of you.
Yeah.
There's that kind of position there. There's now like a railing. And today you can jump, one person can be on the railing, the other guy can jump on his head, and you can see like interconnect adjust, like not deep or anything, but you could get a line. Like it's a new boost, the one that doesn't exist with two people at the moment. So there's that. There's at shore where sandbags are, there's a ledge behind sandbags, so you can jump from the ledge onto the sandbag at shore on your own.
Oh, that's it.
And I know one thing they changed too out at Long, the first corner when you're T, they like rounded this corner, not rounded it, but they like shaved it off a little bit so you can't get punished by an opper who jumped up on towards flowers. They've taken that angle away if he's like tucked in far left on flowers, like against the wall. Like he can no longer see you until you get to the rock and really swing out wide.
There's another one over towards like T stairs as well that like now you can't see the team like going towards playground, I think. And also because it's deeper, I think people were having a harder time throwing the molly, but I'm sure it's just, a matter of time before people work out, an efficient way or some way of being able to block that area or even being able to do as it is now. So like this is the thing, when this stuff comes out, you need to be a lot well, it's not a lot more precise. Your grenades need to be used differently. Even little details, right? Like how people start to refine boosts. So the boost on overpass gets to the point where you have the two little sandbags that the CTs like boost on, but one has a slightly lower elevation than the other, and you want the guy to stand on the slightly lower elevation so the other guy can jump on your head and not have to do the crouch and then bob up and risk getting popped while you're setting the boost up. Right, like the efficient ways of doing things need to be found again. Right, that's an example of what I'm giving here that people will need to now go, okay, now we need to stand here instead. Like we get a better angle here, or this means we won't be visible until we do this. Like, all of these things are going to have to be tweaked again, and that's the nerdiness of the game that gets to be investigated. Because otherwise, hopefully, it is pretty much what's being played now. Because I'm trying to play like a good amount of CS at the moment, being at home. It's fun. Like I'm playing deathmatch every day. We're playing some pugs. We're having some good games. It's good fun, like, and to, hopefully this new version can deliver that same thing. And it feels like it's feeling better every time I play it.
Yeah, it feels like it's on the way.
But I don't know, I'm old. Like, if I was like a 22-year-old again, I'd probably like, this sucks.
If you'd sunk 10,000 hours into CS:GO over the past like 3 years, you might be a little frustrated.
Yeah, so I know that the way I view some of this stuff is maybe not accurate with the.
You didn't even mention the water, how cool it looks.
Yeah. No, I do think it looks cool, but it's not.
It has no real game-changing application, right?
No, it just looks cool. But that's even like,
yeah.
Like yesterday, I was looking over the ledge on Vertigo. You might be hating on Vertigo, that's fine. But they've even changed like how the skyscrapers outside look and like how the cop cars and everything look at the bottom and all that. They've redone those textures, So it's just the little things that make a big difference, gentlemen.
I still wonder if like problem, let's say, with overpass, it's like the map is too big. I really wonder that fix that, I talked about at one time, if that could help it. If you would just
moving the bomb site.
Yeah, just making the map outside of like that line from Monster all the way to A long, right? Like you make the rest of the map like 30% smaller, just so it's like you just make it so that the T's can like actually rotate from A to B without having to have connector and water control, right? Like that it's just so silly how long it takes where, the CTs can go from B to A, re-push A, clear it, and still go back to B before you make it from like bathrooms back through playground and all the way to Monster, it's just like, it's kind of sucky. But, obviously you could argue that, well, that's why connector and water are key on overpass, right? And that's like as important as, I don't know, banana on Inferno and you need to have that control if you want to do that. And if not, you have to like account for it, which it's fair. I think just like sort of I wonder if you are able to tweak it without like really minimizing too much the importance of that part of the map, but still making it just a little bit easier for the T's because... But it's like...
You think about the change so I don't imagine this is going to have a huge difference. Like I said, people will probably work out a way to block this choke point in no time. But if it was easier for the T's to get like fountain control and playground like immediately, right, and they weren't locked in or weren't worried about like scaling up and having to use so many resources, then maybe the map would play a little bit faster. But at the same time, it's the same map, right? So people are going to play it as methodical, right? They are going to take their time. There will be ways to go for aggressive plays. It'll just be different variations. So this is the thing. It's one of the maps that it has a lot of nuance to it, the way that it's played and approached, but it has a lot of downtime of action. So maybe that's its appeal.
Sure. It's always been one of the more tactical maps, like for a long time now. Like it's just been that way.
But it's not just like a standard like pushback though. When you think about like doing a default as a tease and just slowly like pressuring them back and turtling them up, it's kind of it plays a bit differently the way that you can take your timings and when you can pressure different points and areas you can lock CTs into. So it's a little bit funkier than like the traditional map. So I guess maybe that's why.
Yeah, I think too, like Yanko said, because it's so big, like there are just points on the map where you just have to take risks, right? You have to take calculated risks, like how many teams we see like walking it. Like sometimes you'll just see teams walk through bathrooms without using a utility. Like they just take the risk of like having contact because they need the utility later on. It's one of those maps. The only time I ever like get frustrated with overpass is every once in a while it like falls into like the B hit simulator, where you have like that 1 minute long round where like nothing really happens and then they just execute on the B bomb site, which sometimes gets a little boring. But
yeah, and it's about trading or who's hitting the shots, right? Yeah, well, but that's
Still better than
Counter-Strike. Yeah, there's so many Vertigo haters, man. But it's fine. It's fine. Everyone's got their preferences. It's all good.
What's your least favorite map? Mirage, right?
It was Mirage. I think the downtime in Overpass has kind of cooked me a little bit on it in recent times. Just and the sheer amount of saving, right? Obviously, being such an orb heavy map, people love a little bit of a.
I think Inferno's getting a lot of shade these days as well, just because it turns into a save simulator at times.
But the thing is, Inferno's like the middle ground these days. So as a third late, it's always going to deliver from like that kind of a standpoint. But like if you can't get banana control or you're just losing the sights immediately, is a lot of saving going on there. Do you guys have the game on right now?
Yeah, on my second screen.
Yeah, what have you been thinking of your boy Elige, Jason, over there in Complexity?
Look good on day one. I'm going to kind of throw out the Vitality game because that's I think a little bit unreasonable, but they did get straight bodied. But early going was good. He was fragging well, and I mean I think it's kind of like I keep like I don't know if I'm like making it up quite yet. I need to see a little bit more. But like you remember like when Holzert came in, like for junior, and immediately there was like a step up in performance, not because like Holzerk is like some super sick player that like is gonna change, but like just the fact that he wasn't making the same mistakes, like complexity got better, like because he wasn't like pushing into angles and peeking into angles the way junior was. Like just out of the gate they just got better due to decision making, and that's kind of where I feel like complexity is with the Liege. The question is going to be for me, like can complexity look like they've gained form for 2 to 3 months? You know, like is it going to last?
It is. Well, this is one of these things, right? Like this is a broader discussion, not just to do with complexity. I suppose it's this event as a whole. It's like what are you like as an individual, I suppose, and then that can be brought into like maybe what the community general consensus or expectation is, or what the team expectation is. Of how these teams perform or do or don't perform or whatnot. Like for me, I'm not concerned with established rosters, losing in close matches to teams they know nothing about. That doesn't bother me. I'm interested to see like how the new rosters are putting things together. Like how are NaVij playing? Like how are they looking? How are they communicating? How are they addressing the game? What type of play style are we seeing here? And maybe some of these smaller changes. Like if Elige can have consistent good performances, which we know he can have good performances, he already proved that. Consistent good performances as the team gets more reps and stuff in, that's a great sign for a team like Complexity. That's a measurement I can take from this. All right, early signs, Elige still can frag. That's great, right? Like that's the prerequisite of having a player like Elige in your team, that he will shoot. Then if he can, bring a bit more of a mentorship to some of these less experienced players, play that type of a role in the team to help them take that next step, great. Right, so that's how I'm kind of looking to measure Complexity. But right now, whatever they do, it's still such early days. I think people don't appreciate the details that go into coming up with a full game of Counter-Strike. And at different points in your team's evolution, you're focusing on different things. Like you don't just come in and you're a full package immediately. All right, guys, we're going to work on defaults, executions, retakes, post-plant situations. You're not doing it all at once. Right, you're obviously focusing on a couple of key things or a couple of key rules or principles of how you want to approach scenarios or how you want to set up. And then you add and add and add, especially with brand new teams like NaVij. Like that right there, that's starting from day one. You start again. Like it's from day one. And that's going to be such an adjustment period. Like I can't imagine, I can see Simple getting frustrated. And I see the community also like out there doing their classic critique of this again. And we can have a conversation about that too. But like this was always the fear that if they were going to go down this route, Simple needs to be able to acknowledge the fact that this is day one Counter-Strike, right? But even if he does, and is acknowledging that, people know what Simple's like. And, JL, even when he put that funny joining NaVij little thing he put out on social media, like, even though it's tongue-in-cheek, a bit of that is acknowledging the fact that, hey, like, we know that this type of a culture, this type of a team, there's no bullshit. Alexi's even made those type of comments in interviews that, it's a lot more to the point. So that's the way it's going to be. And, I'm not I'm not saying, you know, it's good to rage. I'm just saying that's how he is, and that's how it goes over there.
Yeah, but
like,
I mean, don't you think some of that criticism is warranted?
people can criticize. I'm not saying don't criticize. People can say whatever the fuck they want, but I'm just saying that we know what he's like. So I don't know why the expectation is anything different.
But I mean, the fact that we know how he's like and how is like doesn't mean that he can't be better at some things. Like it doesn't.
No, that's true. But
it's not like we have. I mean, we have to. But I'm saying, like, if you're his teammates or if you are his coach or whatever, you obviously want him to mature a little bit in that sense, you know, and show some understanding for the process and whatnot, and kind of.
Well, that was part of his story already, right? And that is kind of what I was just labeling Elige with. And if he can become more of you know, that type of a figure, and you know, so I get what you're saying, Yanko, and I'm not denying any of those things. I'm just saying, like, why is there such a hoo-ha about it? Like, I don't know.
It's because it shouldn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. Because it is kind of unreasonable from him to make those comments and like sound like. I mean, I saw some of the comments in that thread. It's like, what did he expect? Like, actually, your expectations should be so low at the beginning, right? So basically, you can't be disappointed. But he already sounds disappointed. But I don't know how that is really possible. Like, what were your expectations, right? And now someone's gonna come in and say, "Oh yeah, but that's, you know, simple. His expectation is always to win, no matter what." It's like, well, you know, sure, but that's not really how things work when you make such a drastic change to your lineup. Like that is an unreasonable expectation. You're actually doing more harm than good for your team in the long run with that sort of an attitude and with those comments. Like, you have two guys in there like that are still basically rookies.
They're green, yeah.
You know, like, and I mean, that's it was like we already discussed how big of a risk it is for NaVij to pick up these guys, like, based off of, well, sure, for Ima, it's like a massive, you know, pretty much MVP level of performance in like one major, you know. And I think the problem with some of those things is, it's like, sure, let's say, you know, mechanically very skilled, but it's more about like how many of some in-game concepts do they even know about, right? And if the ones they don't know about, how quickly can they learn, how fast can you teach them, and how quickly can they adapt to the way you want to play tier 1 Counter-Strike, right? And that's something where, when we talk about experience, who can I give as an example? Let's say Borup even, right? Like, he was in Heroic a long time ago, right? And he did play tier 1 Counter-Strike for a while and so on. So when you bring him back to, like, let's say Astralis, well, he's probably going to have good elements of team play and know some of those concepts, right? To know
his
how
comms should be good.
Yeah, his comms should be like, you know. So that's like it's much easier going to be to do things with him than it is with, like, I don't know, probably Altex or Buzz, right? Because they're still rookies, and even though you had them on your academy team where you're probably teaching these things, like, you know, it still takes a while. So I was really surprised. It's like, again, like, if you're a NaVij fan, you must be like, right? Like, you know, like, just this thing again. Like, we saw it happen with, you know, MPL as well. It's like, why, you know, if this is bothering you so much, not just Simple, but let's say as a team, like, why are you making these drastic changes? You know, if you haven't had the conversation being like, listen, the first 3 months, let's say, is only about, like, figuring out how the 5 of us can play together, right?
Well, what's the timeline even, right? It's the next major, right? Like, you have that long to try and figure things out.
Yeah, and the problem is, like, you know, culture and team atmosphere matters, right? Like, you need to want to be there and come into practice. Like, sure, of course, I think for JL and you know, it's like such a huge opportunity. Their motivation is, they're not going to get demotivated by Simple's a few comments. I don't think so, but it certainly doesn't help to see some of his reactions even in game, you know, the spinning around and all of that stuff. It's like, come on, man. Like,
well, they play later today, right? I imagine
anymore.
that won't be in the game this time around, right? I imagine that will probably there will have been a discussion.
I think my biggest problem with it is I think we've seen Simple like learn and understand that, you know, what kind of attitude he needs to have, because the Simple we saw when they won the Stockholm Major was completely different than the Simple we've seen for the past year and a half. And I think, you know, to a certain extent, you know, I guess you could make an argument maybe that, like, you know, his team was performing better and everyone was comfortable and everyone was playing really well, so he didn't have to rage. But it's like, you don't get to that point if you're constantly like poking and raging at your teammates and making comments like the way he's done. I had no problem with like the spinning inside the server, to be honest with you. I think that part's going to be a little overblown in like a 2v4, whatever it was, when he smoked off in halls. Like, that's nothing to me. But like the comments, the tweet after the game, like, of course there's going to be stupid mistakes. Like, and at a certain point, as someone who kind of embodies NaVij as the best player in the world, you need to keep your shit together when you make public posts. And like that lack of that kind of like mental strength to like be that, to kind of establish that culture within the team environment is I think gonna cause delays to their improvement more than anything inside of the game.
I think.
Well, if he's dropping 30 every game, then we're probably okay, right? I know you guys are going to say, well, no, still not acceptable, but you know, then maybe is the conversation a little bit different? Is it that it's now, you know, Simple as he's not dropping bombs anymore? He's having a bit of a harder time out there. Like, obviously, a new team is going to make that, like, it's going to exacerbate that problem, right? Like, it's not going to make things easier.
I think it's just like. For one, I mean, I always wanted to have players with ego, and I think a true star player has to have ego to be that and to take over games and have like moments and bail you out in some situations, right? But, you know, there's also, I guess, a thin line between having that and then just being, you know, arrogant and doing things that are actually hurting your team rather than helping them. I saw firsthand, you know, I think the players are also unaware of how other players, especially young players coming into their team, like how much, you know, in awe almost they are of them, right? And I don't think they really understand still at times how much impact they can have on these players, positive or negative. You know, like, especially if you're like whatever, JL or even, you know, a guy like Alexi B, it's like you're coming to play with Simple, like the GOAT. You know, you've been wrecked by this guy countless times, especially if you're Alexi, right? I mean, because he's played them obviously plenty of times in the tier 1 scene, and now like you're like getting to lead him and play on a team with him and use him, right? And then you come onto the team and it's like, this is what you have to deal with compared to maybe some more understanding and just like sort of leading. You always have like, sure, you have the in-game leader, but also a big voice on your team is your best player. Like, it's always the case, and sometimes, you know, we even heard it in a couple of interviews from Zyvo or Apex, like from Zonic or Apex talking about Zyvo, where it's like, yeah, whenever he speaks up, like in a game, you know, everyone listens and everyone does it, and sometimes it can have this sort of a impact or influence where it's like that was the turning point in the game, right? Because, you know, we started playing better from that point on. People like zoned in and we started turning the game around, right? So I think in the end it's more about sort of just at this point, like it's also obvious, he said it himself multiple times, like he struggles, and this happens when the team not necessarily just isn't playing well, but they don't really know what they're doing, you know, like they don't. So there's a lot of random things happening, and then it's harder for him to play, and then he gets frustrated and all of that stuff. But I mean, you should have expected that at the start of this lineup for sure.
Yeah, well, like I said, they play later today against Big, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes down, like for multiple reasons, because all of this is just like a bit of a learning experience, right? Like we're getting to see how some of these teams are working together.
Also, it was funny when someone asked him about like bit in English, and it's like, oh, only God can help him or something. like that's how bad it is. I mean, just such a.
No, but like I think that's also like that little joke is like low key like a window into like what's a little bit scary. Like if Simple's already like popping off, even if like the comments aren't necessarily the worst thing in the world on day 2 game official number 2, Like, what happens when like you're a month deep? Like, how long did it take Vitality to kind of get over those language issues? Like almost a year.
Well, they even had to change a plan.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, and it's like if you're going to have those language barrier issues that are going to cause mistakes. So, like if Simple's already freaking out on official 2, I think the bigger worry is just looking down the road and being like, can he keep it cool enough to like actually, improve this team in a meaningful way? I think that's a bigger worry than the isolated incident of yesterday or 2 days ago or whenever it was.
But out the gates, like there's no expectation this team comes out and they're the most, they have the deepest playbook. Correct. And they're tactically sound in terms of their mid-round decision making and everybody's on the same page. That's just an impossible thing for anybody to ever, sit here and speculate coming out the gates. What you'd be looking for is the individuals, right, being able to perform. Now, obviously, you need to understand the system and what's happening and where you need to go for fights and what's covered and what you're set up for. Like the level of detail that goes into some of these different exchanges and the expectation from your teammates, but that's going to take some time. Now, you have some teams, some of the best teams of all time, like Fnatic are one of them. They always had this like natural chemistry that they were able to play off of each other so well in the mid rounds. And you listen to the Swedes' comm, it's not full of heavy detail, right? There's kind of like very trust-based. I know Counter-Strike has changed significantly since those days, and it's a lot more moving, and it has to be a lot more talking. But what I'm saying is that that takes time. That didn't happen overnight either. So either to build the rapport and the chemistry with your teammates is going to take time of playing with them, or to spend the time doing the theory to get everybody up to speed on how things should react is also going to take time. So
wait,
it's like,
so which side of this do you fall on? Because I feel like you're arguing that Simple shouldn't be showing this frustration, but then you're also kind of like, he's the best player in the world, and if he drops 30, then fuck it, you know what you're going to get. He's
frustrated because the guy is like everybody who's a competitor hates fucking losing, and we already know that he has a tendency to flare up and let people know how he's feeling, right?
Okay, so you think the flare up is silly that he did it, but you also don't care because of course it's going to happen.
Well, this is the thing. Like I'm gauging it off of an individual whose tendencies I know, right? So for me, for it to happen, my expectation was already there were going to be frustrations shown, right? Like, so I am not surprised, right? That there are frustrations shown. Where I was essentially going with the talk about like the counter there was the way that they were going to be competitive was individuals fragging, which comes down to just skill, right? Multi-killing, being able to get more out of situations than they probably should to bail them out of not being as tactically sound. So like, if you're making these bad mid-round decisions or whatever, this is hard. It's hard because they have the hard front on everything. My point here is it's going to be bad for a long time before it's good, I think.
Yeah, I just think if you're like in that team and you're the organization, you're probably sitting there, you're like, you know what? We expect the frustrations too. And we know there's going to be a hard road, and we know people are going to get pissed off and things aren't going to go according to plan. But at the very least, we can ensure that these comments aren't public and aren't a talking point when people mention our team. Like that's the kind of shitty thing, I think, if you're the player, is as long as Simple is making these public comments, you're going to have people like us, you're going to have people on the desk. It's going to be a talking point, Simple's frustration with his teammates. And that's the last thing you want when you're trying to improve and get better.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that perspective. I don't know. I just think when I think I don't even know how to frame it.
Yeah. It's a weird one.
I'm not disagreeing with you at all.
Yeah.
And I think I just don't. It's not that I don't have an opinion. It's just that it's like, okay, well, yeah, this is happening.
Yeah.
I think also that sort of premise that you're just going to be able to out aim everyone and just sort of bully people with firepower. I don't think that
it's not a long-term strategy.
Yeah, I mean,
by any means.
I don't think that can really happen nowadays. It's like most of the time, if anything, well, you can't really out aim people that much because, well, everyone can aim.
Everyone's individually so much better now across the board.
Yeah, right. Like if anything, like you should be aiming for just having like a very high level of team play, having really good communication, like which is something that NaVij is going to have to work on the most, right? Because when you look at it and you look at teams play, like, sure, but how do you get into positions where aim is the deciding factor, right? Well, then it should be less utility, and you should be coming from maybe an unexpected angle or position, right, where you have like maybe even the advantage, or it's a 50-50 duel, but you still need to create those scenarios in game, right? And that comes from team play, strategy, utility usage, whatever it is, right? And obviously it takes time to implement all those things. So yeah, it's just, for me, is like, you obviously also have to, just like in, you have a star player, you want to make big changes to the team, you should discuss it with him, not necessarily to ask for his like permission, but just get their feel about it, and make sure that they're not caught off guard, and that it's like something where they don't want to play in those circumstances, right? Because they are your best player, the most impactful player. You want them to be happy too, because you're probably going to get the most out of them that way. So I'm assuming that a conversation was had with Simple, and he was in the loop about all these changes. In which case, is like, again, what were your expectations? Like, how are you disappointed? Like, to be disappointed, you had to have had expectations, and there should have been none at the start of this roster. It's just wild to me.
I see I see that. Yeah, at least the Cloud9 situation has finally come through.
Yeah.
That's nice to see on the other side of all of this, right? You got the NaVij, but we also have a bit more pending time before we get to see them play. So we don't get this. I still can't work out if I think this is like a positive or a negative thing.
Do we know
right?
who's the in-game leader in that team?
Electronic.
Electronic? That
Yeah.
was confirmed somewhere, like official?
NaVij, I believe, mentioned it in the interview he gave. Let me see if I can find it again.
All right, but we're operating under the
I feel that's a safe assumption.
assumption that Electronic is the in-game leader.
Yeah, that would make the most sense, right? But this this mutant, well, it's not a mutant, is it? I guess Navi's probably the mutant. This is probably more of the
Do we think?
divine.
Do we think?
It's beautiful?
Do you think so in that case, because there's obviously a role clash now, and Electronic and Hobbit and Perfecto are like, they lack an aggressive rifle, really, like to be the entry fragger in a sense, right? So could NaVij have stayed on this roster without in-game leading? Like, do we think he is like good enough just individually to just play?
I guess if you what a fucking hard discussion, because I think there's a parallel here to like the Furia thing where they kept Art.
But Electronic can be aggressive.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, so now when you look at it, like in the group, you're going to have in the pack, it's Shiro, Electronic, and Perfecto or Hobbit, because Exile is going to play one side. Probably. I don't know who right? Like that's where. So who's going to be the first guy and go there? I think for C9 before I said I think like Hobbit was a bit lacking in that role where he was like the lurk sometimes and had to get some frags and could have turned some rounds around. Like I think that was maybe lacking a little bit. So maybe
what if Axel comes in the pack with Electronic, right, making the space, and then you've got Shiro, Axel, Electronic, and then you've got Hobbit and Perfect.
You want like Axel on that side because it applies a lot of pressure to have such a good player, and knowing that he might have a 1v1 on the side, like it's much scarier than no offense, but having like Perfecto and Hobbit on the sides. Then you would be like confident your anchor like is fine.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's just like we don't have to go super deep into this, but I just, maybe in that sort of I could much clearly see when it's like NaVij there and Electronic as a second guy, like sort of trading him, and Shiro there, and then I have Perfecto and Exile on the sides, right?
But this is
you have two anchors as well in Perfecto and Exile, right? You don't have to worry about that. So the main question is like, first, do you think like he's just a good enough player to just play? And also, are you worried? Has there just been like way too many issues within the team with the relationships and everything because of the losses? Where
Did you
it's
read
just like
his thing?
What? Yeah.
He put out like so in that the way that I guess he spoke about his relationship and coming up with Axel and Shiro, that's and especially that age, right? I think one thing that we don't really give a lot of time to when we're talking about these individuals is definitely how young they are, right? And then like the fact that they're maturing as human beings. And I guess what he was talking about coming up with those guys, they all were part of an academy roster, so they were, even though he was the in-game leader of the team, he's given the responsibilities of being the caller. It wasn't like a team that like, you know, he was the head honcho of, right? There were other mentor leadership figures there. So that's kind of how I interpret what he's saying. Yeah, right? Is the sense that he was on the same level with Shiro and Axel. He's obviously, I saw people making jabs. He's not talking individually. He's talking within the stature of a team. And this is the thing. Team Counter-Strike, people.
Yeah.
A lot has to happen in a team, right? I know we can't have a guy who's only getting 5 kills a map. That I agree with, right? But you know, there's a lot that goes into Team Counter-Strike. It's a detailed beast. You can't go past a beautiful round of CS.
I feel like NaVij made the mistake of giving like a really good interview with really good answers, whose like nuance and actual intentions of what he was saying is just going to get lost by the mass of the community. But I thought these were really, really good answers. That
he always gives good answers, right?
Well, not always, but yeah, I think that's a good interview. But it's also like, I mean, I've said it before. That's why some of the criticism like that he was getting is wild. Like you are sometimes people were phrasing it like, oh, the way they play, it's all NaVij. And it's like, dude, he was on the team when he was like 17. Like he said here, you really think he masterminded like this whole style and is like really adamant about them playing it? Like, no, that's how he was like taught, and that's how they were playing. And then he just keeps, you know, calling within that system. We don't know whether he would have liked to change it by now and change some things, and you know, but I guess they just came to a point where the relationships within the team were too strained and sort of some change need to be made. I like the part in that interview, Jason, that you mentioned, where at some point he said like even changing like the core of the team, which I guess, you know, obviously I have a hard time even to consider NaVij, and he thought it would be a good idea to remove either Shiro or Axel. So I guess in the end, it was just down between
Hobbit part of the core.
It was just between him and Hobbit, right? Like that the decision came down to like he probably wanted to like replace Hobbit because maybe he thought the same thing, that he wasn't really, his output wasn't as much as it needed to be or whatever. But in the end, it was him who got the axe.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that when he spoke about that, it would go back to like maybe even inters being removed, although he was always one of the bigger outspoken proponents of the inters change and what it could bring.
But that rumored NaVij team was kind of cool, right? I think it was like Zorti, Chiron, NaVij. There was one more good name, Siren.
I mean, kind of cool. Oh, you mean the new one coming now that he's out?
Spirit Academy.
I got you.
I swear I saw. Yeah, well, yeah. Not nothing to do with Cloud9. Cool. Like the future for him, like, and he's even like he even mentions in that interview like he's about the future and stuff. Right. This is the thing. As an in-game leader, though, you can get a lot of different inspirations, and when you've been playing in the way that he's been playing, it's going to be, you know, now he gets to kind of pick and choose how he sees the game going forward. It's just I don't know where you end up. He even mentioned going international, but his English not being good enough, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. But I mean, I think his English is really good whenever I've spoken to him, whenever I've heard him in interviews.
Which tells you how highly he values communication and, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think too, like I imagine, you know, maybe that opinion changes too when you realize that you can still put together a pretty solid team with all the talent that's coming out of that region, you know, out of Eastern Europe, that he could actually pick up the CIS players that he could grab and make a team with. He's like, yeah, why even mess with international? But yeah, his future is going to be a really interesting one to see, because I'm with you guys. I think that young in-game leader angle, and he even mentions of it. He's just 22, and he's already been, you know, number of majors, already been considered at various points like a top 3 team in the world. Like, he's got incredible experience for being that young. So I think for him, the important thing is his next team and next project as an in-game leader, he needs to make it bang. You know, you got to be really careful, I think, about this next one, because this is what's either going to build upon this opinion of you as like a failed and struggling and mid-tier in-game leader, or going to show like, oh, when now that he actually has the reins and now that he feels like he's in a leadership position, he can make something work. He can improve a team to be competitive against the world. So his next team, I think, is going to be massively important for the story of his career.
I have a pivot here if anybody's feeling up for it. It's still about Cloud9. But like, so the general consensus is that the roster of the 5 players in the constellation is sick, right? It's a cool looking roster. But what are the expectations? And this doesn't have to be the general consensus expectations, but what are your like actual expectations? I could say, yeah, I think the roster's sick, but like Cologne will be their first event, I believe. So what's the expectations? Like, I don't expect them to come in and win Cologne in their first event. But if they, live in the honeymoon life, there's a world where I could see that happening. I don't think it's very likely, right? Like I wouldn't even know what type of odds to put on something like that. But with the players in the server, the quality is there, right? Of players who could be really, really good. They just need to have like that perfect kind of honeymoon opening event, which isn't out of the realms of possibility. Right, but what are your boys' expectations of Cloud9 in an event like this? I know it's so hard to measure. Well, yeah, because we're measuring nothing. We're just essentially looking at this, weighing it up. Like, there's no language as a problem here, right? So naming of things and stuff like that is going to be very similar. Like, I'm looking at all the pros. Yanko pointing out maybe a couple of issues with overlaps in positions, but just think with the class and the caliber of these players, they should be able to work something out where everybody feels comfortable.
I don't think
young team.
I don't think anything that happens is going to be like red flag disaster. Start the alarms for me at Cologne. But my expectation is I think them making playoffs would be like a really good first step in my mind.
Okay.
I don't think they can bomb out of Cologne and me be like, okay, it's a nightmare. Like, this is actually the wrong. Like, there's nothing that can happen that would make me say this was a bad change.
Okay. All right, so you're very. I suppose that's fine.
I'm taking a very forgiving angle to a bunch of these roster changes for the first like 2 to 3 events. Like like Liquid's playing really well in Blast. They have a couple big wins, but I'm like, okay, cool, but let's also wait until Cologne when teams actually have something to research into them and people get used to Yakinder's calling and people getting used to the plays that these guys like to make. Like, it's going to take, I think, 2 to 3 events to really solidify an opinion on some of these new rosters.
But this is the issue, isn't it, though? Like, what we just spoke about was we're measuring teams right now at Blast at an event where 50% of the field qualifies for the arena, right? And the reason I point that out is not because I'm just trying to be a dick here, is the sense that it is very low stakes, right? And there's a lot of matches that they get to play through, and in some scenarios they even get rematches, right, within this format. Now, it's great to get to see the new rosters. It's great to see them warm into things. But with what they're putting on display here, we know some of the teams are using this as the practice to really start the season. So what you're seeing is very raw. And then we're going to have Cologne immediately around the corner here. So then they're going to have to perform, but they're going to just basically be performing off this kind of a base. They'll probably work out a couple of pocket strats. Like, we're going to see looser CS, because that's essentially what you're seeing here out of some of the newer teams at Blast, right? They're not as well oiled, they're not as well drilled, so they need to trust in their players more to make the right decisions in the right environments.
Bro, I mean, it's just like, it is kind of ridiculous that half of the interviews from teams, half the teams are like, well, yeah, we had a longer break and we're just using this event as a boot camp. Like, so then when I see whatever happens, I'm like, well,
what do we say about it? How do we measure the results?
Here's the thing. It's hard, but it's like, every team will look at it from a perspective that suits them, right?
Sure.
Liquid, they're going to be very happy with the wins, but they're also going to, a little bit be, okay, it's still the first event. We still have things to work on. Like, obviously there's mistakes happening, but you're feeling good, right? At the end of the day, a win is a win, right? But these other teams are going to be like, I don't know, FaZe might be, all right, well, I mean, we're just a little bit rusty, unexpectedly.
We're putting some more hours for Cologne.
Coach as well. Like, we'll get better as this thing progresses. We have 7 more opportunities in this tournament to qualify. It's like, it's not the end of the world, right? Like, so also, then you go to G2, and we didn't change anyone, but again, also maybe longer break, right? Not too influenced by the results of some games. Obviously you don't want some shit things to happen, but you can also say, yes, well, that first game, that was our first official, as well, that they lost to Liquid, right, which turned out to be playing pretty well. So I think you can go down the line with teams and be like, NIP, lost to Complexity, but Hampus is getting used to in-game leading again, and now they're playing again, and they're winning on their own map pick by a large margin and so on. So it just, for every team is different. And then obviously Vitality is going to be like, oh yeah, like we're smashing everyone, or like, the boot camp without PCs worked wonders, and whatnot. But in reality, we'll have to wait at least until Cologne. I think that's going to be a much better sort of gauge for where all these teams are. Vitality beat Complexity and
they smashed
EG.
them.
I mean, they smashed EG and Complexity. Like, let me see them play at least heroic. That's unreasonable. At least heroic.
So
but something like that,
measure,
it's
right?
okay. If they end up 2-0ing a team like that as well, like this dominantly,
they're
then
fucking
holy
sick,
shit,
yeah.
okay, they're actually like really fucking sick. But for a team like theirs, and yeah, they have Flames, right, with the new additions. So you're like, you're feeling good, like with the new player you're adding, like the change. You don't feel too down on yourself for replacing Dupree and whatnot. But I think just that's the issue is, like, really you can't take almost anything away from this tournament unless something drastic happens. Like, I don't know, let's say Vitality does meet, I don't know, Heroic, and they 2-0 them 16-5, 16-6.
Sure,
well, then
yeah,
the
yeah,
takeaway
yeah.
from this tournament for Vitality is they're feeling really fucking good. And they're going to be really confident coming into Cologne, which regardless of their level is going to make them better. Right? Like, and if you
Yep.
see, what you will see is probably FaZe, G2 limp their way into like the top 6 somehow by beating like an NIP or a Complexity, and you're like, well, all right. Like you got the job done, but it wasn't anything like, incredibly impressive. Like, you did what you were supposed to do, and that's it. That's cool. And then for all these teams that have lost, you're going to be like, well, they've showed some good maps here and there. They put up a good fight, not enough, but they can build on that and be better in Cologne, right? And that's just it. There's really not much to build on here in terms of storylines. And what you can also learn about the teams is, okay, you look at who plays which position, right? For some of these new
Yeah, that's
teams.
key.
And then look at the roles and how it's, like, let's say a lot of people were curious how Liquid was going to do things, even though it's like really obvious sort of how their setup is going to look like, but more so to see it in action and see that 1-2 punch of Yakinder and Patsy, how it's going to unfold.
I like seeing NaVij more active as well. I actually have enjoyed that. Like, I know he's still anchoring, but he's anchoring in some of the more active positions. It's good to see him get involved. Like, he gets to show his depth as a player, because NaVij seems like the guy who's going to do whatever is necessary for the team. Right, and I know that he's very good in the anchoring role and position, but I think he can do a lot.
Yeah,
so I think that's really exciting to see more out of NaVij.
And when you consider that NaVij has been like the best / most consistent player for Liquid for like the past year, it's cool to see someone performing that well put in a position to have more impact. So some of these changes for Liquid have actually like worked out to like get NaVij more involved. Like, I noticed on Inferno, like Rainwaker was taking over his normals, like A-Hall's position. So NaVij is able to be more mobile and more involved in a lot of the plays across the map as part of the pack, which is really cool. So yeah, I think that's opened up some opportunities there for him.
Rainwaker's looked pretty good.
Yeah, he's looked
well.
solid.
Like, he's done what has been required of him here, and it's looked pretty comfy. Like, there hasn't been any real glaring dramas.
And that was kind of the selling point as him as a pickup, was like, when I talked to Yakinder and Daps in Dallas, it was like kind of like, look, he plays, pretty low mistake Counter-Strike. He doesn't make a whole lot of mistakes, and he delivers in all the positions that he's put in. So not brought in to like light up the scoreboard and take over the game. I think probably the most promising thing for Liquid is that OC's looked good.
Oh yeah, he hasn't looked like he's been afraid to take fights. Like, he's taken some quite audacious little biffs and battles and hit some good shots. So yeah, all in all, like, again, like this is the thing. The way that the team could work is great. The questions are like, but when you see it happening, you see Patsy playing close mid on Ancient and Yakinda controlling Cave. You're like, perfect. Those are the two type of players that I would love to have in both, like in those positions. That's fantastic. Like, you know, you just look at some of this. Ancient was one that stuck out for me. I'm like, this is cool, but it's like, okay, the questions that we have about Liquid, right? Are these players like Rainwaker and Patsy going to be able to get some good performances in? Well, Patsy's, you know, he's done it pretty good, and Rainwaker, we've just said, yeah, on debut for the team, pretty decent as well. Now it's about like, as the game gets more refined by all these teams, and we look at like the more refined elite level Counter-Strike as the season goes on, how are Liquid going to be able to hang with the in-game leading situation, right? Like, how is that going to look when things get a little bit more stressy? Is Yakinda still going to be able to deliver? Does he still have to deliver, right? Is there enough firepower on the team without him like popping off all the time? So Liquid's questions are also going to come in the future here. But it's good to look at what's working in the now, I suppose, and hope that you can extrapolate. Like, if you need consistency in those areas, and if you can get that consistency, then I guess you can see them go on to be a good team. But they're essentially... Well, this isn't from scratch, even though they changed 2 players. So, like, how much further ahead of a NaVij would you imagine? And like, they already have their base. They're just kind of educating Patsy and Rainwaker on how they want to approach the game here, and probably intermingling a bit. You think it helps the fact that Yakinda can just talk to Patsy in Russian? You think it's helping him cut a couple corners?
Oh, massively.
Definitely.
And I think when you consider that crazy graph that I forget who put it out, it might have been even Nero again as well. Like, Patsy and Yakinda were the most aggressive players we've had, and then Naf and Rainwaker are the most passive players that we have in the pro scene as well. So I think on a certain level, like, Patsy and Yakinda are going to be on the same page, like, you know, pretty quickly, pretty easily in terms of philosophy, in terms of decision making in different scenarios.
But also what you said, Chad, it's not like the you know, people always say the same with honeymoons. It's like people have it, but it's not then that you see. It's like the first time you run into problems and start losing, right? Like, is when a team gets tested. So Liquid isn't really that tested yet, and I don't know what's the opposite of honeymoon, but that's the phase which NaVij is going through right now, it feels like. Actually, not really. I think it's like a little bit too harsh. You know, they beat Astralis in the first game, and then they lost to Hero. Who did they lose to in their second game?
NaVij?
Yes.
I think it was Heroic.
Yeah, they got beaten up by Heroic.
Yeah, it's like you didn't, you know, it's not like you ended up losing to I don't know who. You lost
to the best team in the world.
Yeah, the best team in the world. So I think we'll still, you know, wait and see how things go for them. It's too early to tell. I'm not
even using the term, well, I'm not even really thinking of these moments as like honeymoons for these new teams. Like, there's been such drastic changes that I'm not even like willing to term it a honeymoon. I think the biggest advantage they're getting right now isn't anything based off like the honeymoon effect. I think it's the fact that nobody knows anything about like these teams that have changed 2 to 3 players, like teams that have changed in-game leader. You don't know the rhythm they're going to play with. You don't know what kind of calling style it's going to be. You don't know how these players are going to work together. You don't know how the decisions are going to work when they're playing together. Like, all of this is like teams going up against a blank slate, which is, you know, pro teams don't have to do it that often. And that's why I'm like waiting. That's why I'm like, okay, Cologne is going to show me, like, when you can look into Liquid's Ancient, when you can look into Liquid's Inferno and Liquid's Mirage, then let's see how Yakinda does it when a team actually has a game plan for the kind of pacing he likes, the kind of progression he likes to call, the kind of moves the team makes on the map. Let's see when teams are prepared for it, if you can find those kind of solutions around the obstacles.
Sure, yeah, exactly.
Like that is such a benefit to have at the moment as a new lineup, is that nobody knows what the fuck's happening.
Yeah,
but if things stay new all the time, then we never have to worry about that, Jason.
Bitch.
If we just change rosters every like 3 months, then everything's new all the time, and then we never have to worry about getting that level.
Maybe it's the new meta.
Let's just make sure.
And listen, I think we also have to remember that esports is not a charity, especially not in Counter-Strike. And I wouldn't be mad if G2 at some point pulled the plug. I totally get it. I sincerely hope it never comes to that point, which is why the current G2 better start performing just somewhat decent.
Yeah, it's
what? Is that what? Yeah, Yanka, what? What are you reading?
Someone else just sat down on his PC, I think.
I think
what
it
are you
could be
reading,
a good copy pasta.
What is it?
It was a tweet. It was Jacob's tweet, but it was EG instead of G2.
Oh,
you haven't seen that the other day?
No, I think I missed it.
Why is he calling for the plug to be pulled on EG after 2 games?
Yeah, that was the most like the replies he got were all like that. It's like, why are you tweeting this? Like now that it was they were playing the second series and just lost map 1 or something, I think, or map 1 just started, and
They were against NIP, right?
yeah, I think so.
They had a close series too. They lost 2 maps in overtime, I think.
Yeah, the first map, their pick of Inferno was like a double OT game.
Yeah, they
right?
lost
they didn't let NIP up
5v3 in
easy.
the end. Like they could have closed it out or something. They fucked up some round, but
You know what? It just flicked into my head just quickly, just before I forget. NaVij still banning Vertigo first phase, and or at least from what
God
we've seen.
bless them.
And what do you think Cloud9 are going to play or ban? So the NaVij guys didn't play Vertigo, and the Cloud9 guys didn't play Nuke. So
that is weird when you come from like a perma ban and it's like these other teams. It was their best map.
I mean, you'd ban. Ooh.
right?
I mean, for me,
So I
it's
guess
just
you've got
ludicrous
three
that a
players
team
who
doesn't play
Vertigo,
Nuke
so.
because it's the best map. Like it's, I mean,
I think
it's
Cloud9 could be good.
I think
at that,
it's also, of course, I think they would be very good at the map. It's also like you have so many options on T side, which is like what you want to have, you know, on a map. You don't want to feel cornered that if you don't have all your utility and all this stuff that you can't like do anything, right? Like,
It's
so-
funny that Nuke's taken that swing now, where there's so many options on the T side, where historically Nuke was like, oh, what can you
yeah,
do?
it was shut down. But that's because Secret used to be behind Garage.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
back in our day, Jason, there was a catwalk that, well, ran outside. You just get owned trying to cross even just to T-Red.
Yeah.
Even that used to be hard back in the day. So, you know, we've had a couple of little changes to make it a bit easier. Wasn't that Volcano who moved Secret?
Yes.
Yeah, big change. Good
Yeah.
job,
God
Volcano.
bless.
That was massive.
USA,
Not so secret anymore, is
USA.
it? I would like the reintroduction of the doors, though. Maybe in the new iteration that they do of Nuke at some point, they can put in like the big slidey,
The sliding
'cause it's
see-through doors for the
yeah,
spamming
yeah,
the planter.
because well, this is the thing. So before, I guess the way that it was framed was it was a nuclear power plant, right? Or there was nukes there, so they had these massive like blast doors,
Yeah.
right? So we need blast doors back. I don't want these little fucking flimsy
These
yellow
rinky-dinky doors you can break open.
Yeah, so I want some blast doors. I want
Yeah,
some-
that'd be kind of cool.
yeah, but I guess you couldn't blow them up with a grenade, though, could you? That would probably be a little.
Block
bit
them out
more-
with the smoke still, though.
I saw on Reddit like the other day, maybe this was a week ago, maybe it was even fucking 5 weeks ago now, who knows, it all blends into one, but they were talking about, oh yeah, who remembers this spot on Nuke, and they were showing lower sight where there used to be like that whole room, you know, when you're coming down from ramp, where the like Astralis plant is now, there used to be that door and that whole room in there. Like I know it got me reminiscing about like maps and how things have changed
yeah.
like so much over the years. Like Nuke's changed drastically. You bring that up, it's changed like so many different iterations of Nuke that we had
Yep.
at one point there where they were trying to find the secret source. And
Well-
now like we're saying it's so good, so that's crazy.
Yeah, everyone's wanted to find a way to make it like less CT sided, and it just took so many changes to actually make it happen. To finally
Just took
find the right
17
ones.
different variations
Yeah.
of smoke walls, yard, and vent molly smoke combos to stop rotation.
Why can't we?
to
Why
turn
can't we
into a
give?
T-side map.
Why can't we give Train that kind of love? Let's give Train 17 chances to figure it out.
Well, the thing with Train, right? So old Train, obviously the 1.6 and Source Train, the bomb train used to be,
Further
well,
back.
for those people, it would be old bomb. But as you're exiting CT spawn going yard, not through connector, it would be immediately that train carriage on the left, and it used to be a flatbed train.
Yep.
In Source, it was like this big, ugly, I guess it was like maybe it held oil or something. I don't know what, but it's, you know, some big container. But that's where the bomb train used to be. So it used to play like a much, it was interesting, right?
Remember
Like there was a whole
early-
point in 1.6 where it became T-sided when the Polish guys became real good at getting out T-mid.
And then early CS:GO, you could even like plant at that single yellow barrel outside, and
Oh,
the bomb
yeah,
train
yeah,
was like
yeah,
right
yeah.
in the middle of everything with like the two
Yeah.
oil things popping up. So they've even
Yeah.
changed that. We can't figure it out.
No, but that's the thing. Like when you have inner bomb site, the way the inner bomb site is, like I think it's always going to be quite a difficult map to work out. And it's to do with like the long ranges and stuff. Even with all the different smoke walls and whatnot, I don't know. A lot of people were talking about wanting like something like cash back. I've had people ask me that question before. I feel like maps like Dust 2 and Cash maybe are too simple. Like,
Dude,
it's-
I actually think Cash. I don't know about this current iteration, but if I go back to the old iteration, I actually think Cash could be a lot of fun with the current play style and meta. I think it'd be really hard for CT sides, but I think it'd be a lot of fun to watch.
Well, if util was much better and punishing positions a lot more from the T sides, like that's one thing that's really been tightened up in the modern era of Counter-Strike, right? Like how well the Ts can use their util to either make sure a spot's clear or condition you not to play a position. So like it'd be interesting to see that refined.
I think you would,
and even what positions you could abuse.
I think also you would see a lot better utility usage from the CTs, like for the retakes. Remember how we had a couple of those old school B retakes, right? Like just have an op playing CT, and then after that you use the mollies, the smokes, and everything. Those were like chaotic, really at times, but fun. I don't know. I always liked Cash, man, because it always felt like, even back then, as noobs, like there's always like give and take. You always have options at CT. Okay, mid is hard to hold, but if you lose it, you can push A main or be more aggressive towards B in the beginning, right? Like there's different things that you could do, which is always so weird to me. I know MSL, for example, hates the map, and he felt the opposite, that there's nothing you can do at CT, which is like,
yeah,
how can this be your like sort of approach? Like, that's weird. That's like, I just didn't feel like that was true. So yeah, I think it would be fun to see it. I'd really like to see a TO, a smaller thing, even like maybe the thing you did, Chad, like some of those, like however you call it,
streamer tournaments, essentially.
Yeah, like to do MR12 and see how it would work. But the problem is, like, I would change the loss bonus after you lose the pistol to be like maybe 2400.
Okay, so you have a pretty strong second round.
Yeah, either strong second round or a decent like first buy round, so that the pistols don't really impact the score that, as much as they, they would impact it a lot more if it stayed the same in an MR.
Yeah, that was always the biggest issue with MR12. You win both pistols and convert, and all of a sudden you're halfway to a win.
Yeah, the bigger concept that you're kind of bringing in here, Yanko, is something that I feel is a little bit of a shame that we don't have it as much as we once used to. There was always different tournaments. Now I know that there's like fun tournaments on like Facer and stuff, but when Counter-Strike was a bit more regional, and maybe this is one reason to get me to help the North American train here, when we had things like CEVO and CAL and CPL and everything like that, there was different tournaments that had different maps. So you wouldn't, like in the best tournaments, they didn't necessarily have some of these funky maps. But in a few a year, you had some, like Season. I remember having to learn Season in Source, and that was a map that we'd have to play. And I know it's not for everybody, but at least there was a testing ground to see if things worked or if they, whereas now we rarely get those type of things. And when we do, when they come in, they're not treated with disrespect, but the tournaments when stuff isn't quote unquote like Valve official and how it's going to be in the way that the game is competitive, things aren't taken with the same level of seriousness, which is fine. So you still don't even really get. All right. Oh, someone doing a burnout. What's going on there?
Yeah, that was a bit intense.
That's aggressive, Jason. This is where you, as a new father, need to go run out on the front and take a picture of their license plate and shake your fist and go, "Yo, the fuck, yeah." I don't know what you're going to say, but I'll give you creative license there.
Yeah, that happens frequently. The little burnout. We have like a little. The road is relatively straight for quite some time, and not a whole lot of police presence.
Okay.
So
have you considered starting a neighborhood watch?
I haven't. I've no desire to do that.
Do you know any of your neighbors?
I do. I know most of my neighbors.
Do any of them seem like they would be interested in starting a neighborhood watch?
My neighborhood's a little bit older, so I don't think anyone really wants to walk. We have a tiny neighborhood.
But they definitely
really
don't like the
everything.
burnouts then, Jason.
No, probably not. So one of my neighbors is a former prosecutor for the judicial system. And my other neighbor is a high-profile judge in the city. So I feel like with those two
where's the
people,
police presence, Jason?
With those two people, my neighborhood's pretty safe. I feel like they've got things on lockdown.
Okay, well, it's contradictory here of what we've just heard. At one point, we say it happens quite often. At another point, we say not much.
The burnouts happen often, not standard criminality.
Yeah. And then thirdly, finally,
everyone
we should
enjoys
be okay.
Pushing the pedal to the metal.
I'd recommend everybody when behind a steering wheel in a car that it's a weapon. Okay, you need to be very responsible when you're in that. Other people's lives may be at risk, so make sure that you know how to drive your vehicle.
He's not
Jason,
wrong. Yeah,
you know, these are big hunks of metal here. They can go very fast.
they can.
It's a remarkable piece of technology, the fact that we've been able to create such things as automobiles. And today, on this episode of Talking Counter, we're going to be getting into trains, planes, and automobiles. Now, gentlemen, what's your favorite mode of transport? Guys,
I like a train.
what's going on?
I like a train.
What's going on? Is everyone happy? Jason, you said you're a bit sluggish today. Is everything okay?
Yeah, it was just an early wake up. You know, I'm very happy. I'm in a happy place at the moment. I'm excited I've been having a lot of fun watching Blasts. I'm excited to get back to Cologne, but life is good right now.
Okay. All right. You're content.
Yeah, very content.
All right.
You
got,
do sound happy.
I've got some fruit and veggies growing, boys. I just planted some pumpkins
I saw some
a while
broccoli.
ago.
There was
Yeah,
some
I did broccoli and Brussels sprouts. I got tomatoes coming up. I got peppers, and then I'm waiting on cantaloupe and pumpkins to start showing up.
You're turning into a prepper, Jason.
You like that shit? I'm gonna get a chicken coop next year. And then
Can
I'm
you get a
gonna have to
rainwater
never
tank?
I have one of those.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you trying to get off the grid?
No, the rainwater thing was here before I got here, and I haven't really used it. It's just kind of there for show.
Oh, come on, man.
But
Could be using it to water
yeah,
your plants.
try to set up a little bit more of like a homestead situation, you know?
Yeah, and I'm just trying to keep a couple of plants on a balcony alive. So, you know,
Plants
we're
are hard to
basically
keep
doing
alive.
the
I have a
same
bunch of
thing.
plants indoors, and half of them are dying. I'm not doing a great job with those.
I'm about to go away for 2 weeks and have to keep these plants alive, and I don't know. They're going to all be dead, and I'm just going
You
to.
got to do cacti.
I've got a couple of cacti. Yeah, I bought some of those, but you know, they're not the sole greenery in the house. There's other plants which I know are a bit more lush are going to require some H2O, and they might just be not surviving. And that's the way it goes. You need water, and that is my reminder to you at home to drink some H2O. I keep breaking the immersion today.
Bro, you're supposed to
why.
drink like 3.5 liters of water a day. That's hard.
No, that depends. That's not true. I think it's different for every person, and if you drink too much water, actually, you might
Drown.
hurt your kidneys.
Well, I'm Googling it right now, and it says adequate daily fluid intake is 3.7 liters a day for men. Now, obviously,
Come on,
that changes.
man. Almost 4 liters of water a day. Come on, man. What am I looking
That's
at?
the
Fucking-
first.
You're
That's the
spending
first
like
Google result.
you're spending like 300 euros a month on water, then, or something like.
almost 4 liters of water a day.
I'm
That's
telling you,
insane.
you have to really
said
work
too much.
hard to get there. Really work hard to get there.
Yeah, well, I imagine so. I can do 2.5 and on a good day 3. But thinking of going more, like a good day 3, a good day I've gone to bed and I know I'm going to be, waking up needing a piss. So I guess it's going to come down to the amount of output that you're doing. How active are you? Are you getting? When I went out yesterday to go for a little bit of a swim, and it's hot. It's like fucking 37, 38 degrees type of hot. So I go early in the morning, but it's still already 32, 33. So you're sweating buckets. So I'm drinking a bit more water on a day like that.
Yeah.
If you're not, you're feeling it. You get a bit of a headache.
A few
Your
more
back's starting
gym
to hurt.
sessions throughout the day, and yeah, you're going to be drinking some water as well.
Oh, you just saw this tweet, Yanko?
Yeah, that's hilarious. Actually, I won't.
Yeah, he's a bit of a jokester.
Yeah, JL. Just for you guys, the tweet is like he posted the roster page from HLTV and like so proud of us, number 30 in the world, only a few weeks together, and we're already conquering the world.
Yeah, it's fucking wild. Like,
It's banter.
I think
that should be the attitude. Simple,
Yeah.
At least JL's bring it to the table here, Matt.
Yeah.
He's shown to be a good personality, which I think is cool. I hope that Immer can get some good performances under his belt for his confidence here, because he's had a bit of a rough go of things in the first few matches they've had, which I guess is the hardest thing, right? You go from like almost major level MVP to an event like this with a brand new team and high expectations, and someone who's getting a bit upset with how things are going. Yeah, it's gonna be uphill battle.
That's the risk that NaVij took, right? Like, was this a flash in the pan, or is this actually going to be able to continue?
Yeah, and I imagine it's going to be a couple of events before he starts to feel comfortable here, and that's where it's the jury will be out for a decent period of time. And with the string of events that we have coming, I guess it's going to be hard to tell if teams are really unhappy early. I guess it would have to be going catastrophically bad. You'd have to be losing everything. Like the first couple of events, just dead last to everything to have like one of these, nah, fuck it, like we're changing type things. So I highly doubt we'll see too much of that. But I also think we're not going to see consistency in results. Like this is another thing. Like right now, the two best teams in the world are Vitality and Heroic, right? Like that's the status quo. Then after that, like we don't know how good Cloud9's going to be. So we can't really put a marker on them, but our expectations is they should be quite good and in the upper echelon conversation. So then after the likes of Heroic and Vitality, well then we're looking at, even though I know that FaZe and G2 had those losses to Liquid, you're looking at your Enters, your G2s, and your FaZe, who are your next rung of teams, right? And then after that, everybody else is pretty much unsorted. So the results that we're going to have coming up, it's so hard to pin who's even going to win. Like we're still in the same position we were before the major, right?
Do you know who's playing for Gamer Legion?
No, that's the other thing that hasn't been announced yet.
Cypher goes to TSM, right?
It must be known because I'm pretty sure the deadline for rosters for thing is already in.
Well, what, Chad? Where's your inside information, man?
I don't know, but we don't. I really don't know,
because they're also like
it would be
they're
nice.
they're in the groups of
Top
Cologne,
8.
not in the play-in, right? Like they're in that
top 16.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting to see. I think also, man.
Wait.
Well,
they have 3 players on their roster on HLTV, and they gained a spot in the world rankings.
Yeah, because other teams, fucking change more. It's pretty funny, right?
But and also, I want to start putting more spotlight on ends. And it's like, this is also a moment where you can step up, right? Like we've seen that things are shaky for G2 and FaZe. This is where you can like really establish yourself in the top 3 behind Heroic and Vitality potentially, right? And like take that next step. They managed to win in Dallas. Obviously a big moment for them. Played great CS. That was pretty much it for their season without playing the fall finals. But yeah, they have plenty of time. They had an extended break thanks to that. I know they boot camped already. Probably some more days of online practice before they go into Cologne. So I want to see how they perform to show us that it wasn't just a one-off in Dallas. I'm also, again, curious to see how VP will look now with Mir. Mir's been off the radar for a little bit. He's coming in for kicker. So I guess it's like Flit, James, Fame, Norbert. Mir, and Norbert, which is...
Yeah, so funny considering the circumstances, right? That Norbert ends up staying around after the whole Norbert Chiron situation, and then Norbert coming back, and
also
it is curious.
It's pertinent to the discussion we've had about bringing in younger players versus veteran players. Like Mir is a veteran player.
He's 27, I think.
Really, that old?
I think so. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I have no interest in Virtus Pro. Yeah, he's 27. I have zero interest.
Okay, Jason, thank you for fucking. I was. Trying to make a point here, by the way.
No, it's a good point. It's a fair point. I'm just saying, for me, I'm just saying,
fuck Virtus Pro.
I really don't care to see this team play. I'm so over it. I'm so done with the play style that James.
What are you going to do when they're lifting trophies, Jason? You're going to have to talk about.
You're going to suck it, Jason.
They're not going to lift a single trophy for the rest of the year.
What percentage would you put on that?
90.
Would you bring back the cream pies?
Ooh. Who's on the other end of the cream pie if I win?
I don't know. It just feels like you're so
that's an important part of the equation. I'm not going to bring back the cream pies just for any old scrub. It needs to be a big target.
Well, who do you want to get all creamy?
Let's see.
Megan Fox is not available.
Yanko's got some revenge factor.
Oh, but Yanko gets another swing at the king if he wins, and I would,
Then you have a child now you need to think about, Jason.
And what level trophy are we talking about here, Jason? What if they go and they win another ESL Challenger event in Katowice?
Yeah, look, calm down. We know we're not counting that one.
Okay, so you want
it's got to be like an IEM event or like a Blast finals.
Okay, so almost impossible for them. Well, not almost impossible. Actually, I don't even know.
This team won the major less than a year ago. Why are you saying it's impossible?
They are.
Because I don't know if they're allowed to play in the Blast qualifiers, are they? Did that change?
I mean, they were allowed to play under the VP banner in Paris, so I imagine.
Yeah, I thought there was something. Maybe it's been rectified, but there
Probably
was
a lot of
Russian
backpedaling
qualifiers or
going on
whatever.
these days when it comes to all that stuff. So
Yeah.
It is what it is. That's the motto for life these days. You know, so you hear a lot of that. You hear an awful lot. As I look at this blast screen just fly through overpass, I looked at they're going to have to re-update all of these cam paths.
Yeah.
Someone's going to have to go in and redo all this.
yeah, actually, like when you said if you're watching the game, I had it on the second stream, and I actually got tilt during that like 30-second period.
Why?
Because the score is 3-0, Chad, right?
Yeah.
For complexity. They won the pistol, they converted. I glanced towards the screen when you said that. It's like 1 minute on the clock, like 56 seconds. And I see two guys pushing ramp just as like the A anchor Brolan ST is leaving it, right? Like NIP is grouping for a B split, and complexity just pushed at the perfect timing for Impo. Floppy is flanking. There's already guys leaning over towards B. They have everything. And then all they need to do is just like buy a little bit of time for Floppy. And then the two guys on B die without killing anyone. Elise jumps through the window, gets 2 kills, then dies. And then even like Grim, I don't think he maybe got like 1 kill or something. He was there pretty quickly. So it's like, as a coach, you're watching this and like, yes, we did the correct things. And then just like, you just needed to stay alive for a couple more seconds. And you could tell that probably they were a little bit confused to be in that situation, because it didn't seem like it was a proper setup that the two guys on B had. It was just like, because they didn't have cat control, right? So I guess on one side, if you're a complexity fan, it's really tilting. But on the NIP side of things, it's nice to see, like, even though your opponents know you're coming, because you got map control and you're splitting the site and you use your utility well, they're still able to win the round. But it went to be, I think, first half was 10-5 for NIP. They won like 8 rounds in a row.
That was NIP's map choice. So
after that round, so it's like, if complexity could have won this round, which they were in position to do it could have been 4-5-0, right? Like, and maybe a different game. And then in the second half, they lose pistol, 13-5 down, then they're 13-8, and they lose to a half buy because they didn't clear like the site properly, and that's where they ended up losing the game.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, right? Like, I think some of the things, right, like with these matches, and look at Hampus here, he's having a great time. Pissed around overpass, guys. If you're going to be syncing it here on the watch companion, no, but some of these games, right, really can be, and it also goes the other way as far as comebacks go as well, can be decided by these key rounds. And I know that we joked about this a while ago, like when Hooksy was casting and we were talking about the economy stuff. I know that you brought it up before here, Yanko, about, me bitching and moaning that people say that's all I talk about. But really, like, a lot of Counter-Strike, most of Counter-Strike is dictated by what you're able to buy in a round, and then what type of openings that you're able to present, or like what type of weaponry you have for certain fights, right? Like, it all can boil down and be rooted back in a lot of that. And you look at these games, like, it's a 10-5 half in a match, and you flip over, you win the pistol round, or you lose the pistol, right? You win the force, you win their force back, you win the eco, you win the first gun round. It's like, well, we're fucking back in it. Like, Counter-Strike games, like, it can happen in the blink of an eye. And that's why I think, like, even if a match is starting 6 or 7-0, it could still be a really close half. And I notice when you play, you can get mega complacent. And that's the thing, I guess, that these teams need to make sure that you just keep, like, the foot on the gas. But it's so much harder when the other team actually knows how to hit back.
You have to remember that just because everything, it's like, what's the actual, like, phrasing for that? Past results are not guaranteed of future outcome, something like that, right? Like, where it's just because everything's going swimmingly now and you're owning them and you're 8-0 up, doesn't mean that necessarily will continue in the same fashion or even continue at all for the remaining like 7 rounds of the half, right? Like, you need to treat each round as its own, in a sense of not getting complacent, right? And not letting that lead sort of slip through your fingers, or letting the other team get back into the game emotionally as well as result-wise, right? And
you talk about getting back in the game. Did you see that Carrigan ninja defuse the other day?
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah, and then they almost got back in the game and then lost 16-14.
Then they
That
lost.
right
They
there
were.
is
They
excruciating.
lost a 3v5.
5v3, yes.
Yeah, it's like 5v3.
Even Naf in the post-game interview was like, "Yep, that was almost a real liquid match right there."
Like this is the thing. We're talking about like a lot of these teams and like early expectations, and also being like, well, it's hard to grade them harshly on this, or each team has a different set of expectations or way to frame the results that are going to happen here. But the thing is that for me, I think is great, and that's a similar way that I'm looking at it. Like I kind of set different goalposts for everybody. But the thing that has been true with some of these games, I wouldn't say all of them, that would be impossible, but there's been some entertaining Counter-Strike. Like it's been some fun moments, some good multi-kills, and that's essentially what you're looking for here. And that's one of the more forgiving areas of this format, right? Like it's teams. This is the thing, like if you have teams that are going to deliver fun, exciting, high skill matches, right? That's great news. It's just when you get some of these like blowouts and matches that aren't entertaining, and that's difficult to maintain across this field, as we've seen with certain partner teams not being competitive for the entire existence now. So I don't know. I've enjoyed watching. It's good to get the Counter-Strike back on the telly. And it's good to be able to flick it on. 2 games a day, very manageable watching amount as well, I would say. Not
the
multiple
schedule's
streams.
been nice. There's been a couple like 3-game days, hasn't there? But it's mostly just 2 BO3s.
Bro,
I think it's going to get a bit old with rematches and seeing the same team play like 6 times. But yeah,
I just really hope Blast changes the format for next season. Like it feels like such a waste of like some of the days and the games, and I don't know. Like I saw like EG plays on Saturday next against the loser of Phase G2, and their last game that they played was was it on Sunday that they played and lost the game? Like, let me see. Let me find this.
It's usually like 1 or 2 day break, right, between the matches here.
And sure, like I understand that they lost, the game. So they played on the 15th. That's a Saturday. So it's going to be a week.
Today's the 18th.
It's going to be a week for them between 2 games where they're like,
they get plenty of time
in
to practice,
Copenhagen.
man.
It's like, why? How is this a format? Like,
But this is what we're talking about with the boot camp, though, Yanko.
Yeah, I understand, and that's why you see it makes sense. But it sucks, like for the competitive side of things, because you're like, well,
yeah, we are losing out here.
It's
if
like,
it was more open, we could see more teams.
You can't obviously on the broadcast, you can't openly say, well, we know teams are, using this tournament as practice. Well, why would anyone watch it then? Like obviously you want to attract viewers and all of that stuff, but it's just like I feel like with minor changes, it can be so much better. Right, like with the same amount of days, and like for one, I feel they should probably like. I think you definitely need to make. Well, I don't think you can because you need money, but the World Final needs to be the biggest event, not the Fall Final. It's just silly, right? So make the World Final the Royal Arena event, and expand it to 16 teams, right? Like, and make it so that. Sure, the teams from your circuit, whatever, but you have more opportunities for the really good teams to qualify and be there, because I like that event because of the crowd and the arena. It's really cool, and the stage, it's like everything's really nice, but at the end of the day, it's like 8 teams there, out of which 6 come from the 12 that are your partner teams, which, you're hoping that the best teams will make it through that side of things, and you won't have like OG somehow always there, right? Because they've accrued like a big number of points or whatever. So I feel like you need to do that. Like, I mean, ideally you would do that, but even if, let's say, they can't because of, well, I think you can because of the money, because you just say to whoever you're selling it to, Abu Dhabi, or like, hey, we need you to pay for 16 teams instead of 8 teams. Like, we're changing the circuit. And then also fucking either find 4 more partner teams, like, and make it 16 teams, or just make it so that you can invite 4 more teams to your like group stage games or whatever, or hold a close qualifier, like something like online for 2 days, right? Like, it's so much easier to make formats with 16 teams. You don't have to do these mental gymnastics that they have with this format, and like people, switching groups, knockout phases, triple elimination, all that bullshit. Like, just make it fucking vanilla, make it like GSL best of 3, 4 groups of, or whatever, like and let teams play it, and then you can spice it up with like seeding, and then teams pick who they want in their group, like, or whatever. Like, you can find a different way to make it interesting.
They can even give the perception of it being more open, Yanko, because they can just say, well, instead of having like a qualifier, like what you're talking about with the group stage thing, have 4 more teams, so it's 16 teams for the group, and then you can have more sensible group stage scenarios, right? But also, you can just make it so that you can just say, oh, it's the top 4 best teams in the world who aren't our partner teams. And then you get the best 4 other teams in the world. Like,
yeah, exactly.
That's great for them, right? Like, it's more eyeballs, and they just like, and you just flat out going, yeah, we invite the 4 best other teams, and that's fucking awesome. That's going to help.
Fill those teams don't get revenue or anything, but they get to compete, and they get to win the prize money, right? As well as these other teams, and they will help the partner teams too, because it will attract more viewers. If you could have here like Ants, Cloud9, and I don't know who else.
It's a bit early for my first shot of Jameson, gentlemen, with this format discussion. I think you're all. I think these are all right, but I think the more important thing with Blast format is like, it's just like, I think it's time to do away with this like Fantasyland where their circuit is like a complete continuous season. You know, like we do these splits, but
because it's already not.
The events are already so far apart that like there's no continuity between the group stage, and then I think the showdown is right after Pro League.
But so then, what do you do? Right? Is the group stage still a group stage, or is it a standalone event?
I think
in 2
2
weeks you could very easily run a standalone event.
If there's gonna be this much of a split between like the group stage and the showdown, and then the world finals, like just make them like separate events. Just go like old school esports and stop trying to make it like this continuous season, and just say this is going to be an event that we do 2 weeks, 16 teams, like a Cologne type situation, and then your showdown is a separate event in itself, and you find a new way to get teams qualified to what are your marquee events, which are the spring finals and the fall finals.
This is the thing we know, right? We understand that doing these big arena events is really costly, and essentially in a year, Blast do 3 arena events now, right? Like they did Washington, they are going to do Copenhagen, and then at the end of the year, okay. So 2 of the 3 arenas aren't like big blockbuster arenas, right? So they have their one big one, which is in Copenhagen. The other 2 are sizably smaller, but they still have those end up with the crowd. Right, so in a year, those 3 crowd events of different sizes. The 2 group stage events that they're doing, like they're 2 weeks. Let's say it's not a group stage; it's a standalone tournament with 16 teams. They're broken up into 4 groups, like we're talking about here, and then you just run that tournament out. Like, is there need for that tournament to be an arena event, or can it just be a studio event? Because we know that cost. No. Right now, they're just running a studio event, so the cost is obviously lower, right?
Here's the problem. It's like it doesn't have to be the Royal Arena. I mean, that's a bad example, but it doesn't have to be a massive arena in like, I don't know where, right?
You want a smaller hall, something a bit. Yeah, we've spoken about this a lot.
Like it was, I guess, in Washington.
DC was awesome.
Yeah, or Dallas as well. Like Dallas is even like fairly big. I guess I don't know. At least it feels like that way when you're inside. Of the center, but it's like just do what you originally wanted to do, which is like stops, and you're like F1. But you go to cities that don't have events, come to them, and you pick an arena that's like 3,000 people, which you can most definitely fill for like the weekend. You know, people will come. There's just that many, not only Counter-Strike fans, but esports fans who will like just make it a thing for them to do that weekend, right?
They had
Madrid or Lisbon. You find like a couple of spots like that. You have that. You can always have one in the Middle East. You already have relationships there, and then you just make like the Royal Arena, the big one at the end of the year, and you make it for 16 teams, let's say, instead of the 8 teams. And that's it. You go in, and you're out. It's different. You're not trying to compete with like ESL on a scale of like making 24 team tournaments or 16 team tournaments and lasting 2 weeks. It's like, you shorten it, which costs you less. It's like you're paying you're paying for 7 people for their rooms for 7 days in a nice hotel, also an extra room for their practice room, the PCs, all of that stuff, for them to not even play at your tournament.
Sure, yeah, like, but then that's the partner situation coming into play, right? But the thing here, Yanko, that you're bringing up, I don't think
maybe
in this situation, right, with the way the world is right now, it wouldn't make any sense for them to move away from not using the resources they have. They're going to use that studio space, right? Something like that saves them a lot of money. like for them to go the route you're talking about, you have to partner with these cities if you want to get like deals on the arenas or whatever,
Yeah.
or make it your life easier to come in. And I know you mentioned some good ones. They've had some good events in different places before, but these all come with their own issues. Whereas like if the stuff about their books was out not that long ago, right? And I'm an idiot, right? So I'm not here to comment about like the finances, but I would say they're not making money, right? So like with that in mind, we've seen this happen before. This happens to all these businesses. It comes to some points like, okay, well, we need to try and save money now, like cut budgets, do this, do that. Like if anything, I wouldn't imagine them expanding and going into more arenas, right? Like I think that would put them further in.
Depends what your business plan looks like and what your business plan is. Like that.
Well, this is the
obviously
thing.
It would be a huge shift, but it would only work like if you do get those arenas either for free or people to pitch in, and then figure out a way where you can monetize, like in a good, whether that's more things that you would do on site and like charge people more for attendance, because something that we see every time also with Cologne is the tickets that go out the fastest are the most expensive ones.
Well, yeah,
Like,
that's the hardcore fans,
that
right?
should get sold out like within a day, you know? So there is like demand for that sort of stuff, and people are willing to pay, you know, for that sort of an experience. Now, instead of, let's say, having 1,000 of those tickets because you have only 1,000 seats, maybe find a different venue that's smaller, but 3,000 people could get that experience, and then sell it, you know, for that much money, for more money, right? Like charge it more and see if people will pay. Let's say, for the sake of this argument, like that people would pay that much, and all of a sudden you have more revenue from ticket sales, your cost is lower because it's a smaller arena, right? And you're making one step towards like something being more sustainable. Why does it have to be inside of an arena for 18,000
10K.
people, right? Like what does it really influence? Like, sure, it's
the
cool.
spectacle, the headline.
It's cool to see like people, you know, the whole arena chanting or cheering or singing if you're in Brazil or wherever you are, if it's like most people from one country, right? But in reality, you look at Katowice or Cologne, right, or Royal Arena when a Danish team is not playing, it's like, all right, it's not like, I mean, it's cool, it's a big arena and it's filled out and it's nice, you get some nice shots, but I mean, you would probably get, how sick was the atmosphere in Rio during like the first two stages, and it was only like 2,000-3,000 people, not even because it's Brazilians and it was loud, but just like even Dallas, like you can get a really good atmosphere out of like 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 people. I mean, 5,000 is already a big number, but let's say 3,000 people, if the arena is like right and they're having a good time and they're engaged in the game, right? Like, it's not a live sport. It's happening on a server. Like, people are sitting behind the PCs. I don't understand. Like,
I think a lot can be done in terms of how we watch Counter-Strike live. I don't think we're where we want to be. I think the issue is none of the TOs who run Counter-Strike events just do Counter-Strike. And the reason they don't do that is because they don't see a way that they can make money off of just Counter-Strike. So nobody is all in on Counter-Strike. That's the problem. The only people who are all in on Counter-Strike are like people who exclusively just work on CS, yeah. Like, and I only exclusively work on CS.
Please
right?
stay around for a long time.
But these TOs, Blast and ESL, are not all in on Counter-Strike. It's not their number one priority. It's probably not even their second priority, right? The way that I look at these businesses is they run Counter-Strike events as an advertisement to the rest of the gaming world who are going to open their massive pockets and pour out money for them to run white label events, right? So Counter-Strike not being their focus, right, means that some of these ideas that we're talking about, which maybe in the short term are going to come with some issues, maybe they'll have to overspend before we can see if it can be a profitable thing to do in the long run, to see if there is that demand for what you're saying for the, you know, anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 smaller audiences. We should also take a risk in the way that we display the game, you know, try and up it a little bit, make it a little bit more interactive, make it so the players are more open, so we have a bit more of a head-to-head environment. Like, all of these things we've spoken about requires a TO or some motherfucker with a shitload of money who wants to execute some of these ideas to come on in and take a risk and see if we can change things. But nobody has the green light to do this stuff, right? Because we're just, you know, maintaining the
Status
baseline.
quo.
But in terms of what we're doing broadcast wise for different things. Like I loved what Blast did in terms of their sponsor integration for content. Like I think in some of the stuff it's getting a little bit old now, but in the beginning when they were doing this years ago, I was glued. Like fuck, they've integrated this very well. I think ESL are doing a much better job of pushing out different diverse content to offer up newer looks on things and pushing that over different social media platforms. But we're now talking about a new area, and that's like the actual live consumption of Counter-Strike. And I think there is a lot that can be done there. And maybe with the blow up of CS2, we get some people who are willing to take some of these chances and risk to see if they can put tournaments on to facilitate what you're saying, Yanko, because I am 100% with you. I think that we could really change the way that the game is viewed. It could change the environment, and we're not just sitting there every time a 10,000 people arena only has half field going, oh, this is kind of average. We could actually have something which is high demand, and something that we can replicate.
And it's stressful for so many people, like people in the company, right, in the sales team. Oh, we haven't sold out like the tickets. It's going to look half. And the people in production, then how are we going to show this arena without
different camera shots,
looking shit, right? Like all these things, which is and why are we going into this arena? Well, because like it feels like some of it is just people are used to doing it and not really thinking about what's like how it will look and can we actually pull this off. And also, I mean, dude, like I'm sitting here talking about Blast format and the competitive or whatever. I mean, I've done like last 10 seasons of Pro League, but no one knows better than me like how fucking shitty it is trying to talk seriously about games, or like sometimes talk about Pro League, like when we were still doing when we were only the desk was in Katowice, you're not with the players and everyone else, and you're like, and you're treating it like you're supposed to, like the segments look exactly the same as if I'm doing Cologne, right? Like, I mean, that's just ridiculous, and that's why
we're doing what
we're doing now, and we push for it because we are very, very well aware, guys, that also like something like Pro League is not a super prestigious event. Like you get a lot of volume of games, you get a lot of teams that you don't usually see, and probably the one thing that makes it important is the fact that it counts towards the fucking Grand Slam, which is not to be underestimated, right? And for some teams as well, a team like Ants made the final, right, or the semifinal, like last semifinal, which was a surprise. So for some teams, it's like, oh, they can gain some confidence by having some good result. But that's why we're trying to do it like in a different way, to make it more about the broadcast than just the matches. Because people will always come to watch a good match, an important game, right? But how do you get people to, even if it's like a complexity NIP and you're like, well, I can miss this, but you don't want to miss it because, we'll do some cool shit. You'll get to hear more from the players, or maybe a player will cast the game, like be with the casters and tell you something. It's going to be some ridiculous kits, Jason getting pied, something like that, and then you're like, oh, I'll actually get entertained outside of just the Counter-Strike match, right? Like I'll get other forms of entertainment through this, and then they'll be hopefully more prone to watch.
I mean, if you distill all that down, I mean, and we know this as well, most TOs are still operating under the idea of recreating like sports broadcasts from like the early 2000s, and that's just not the way content is.
Sports broadcasts just don't go for 10 hours a day.
And it's not the way content is consumed in these
actually
days.
12 hours a day with 3 best of 3s.
Like it's just
they
not.
have like a 4 or 5 hour stint. It's a bunch of different teams.
And I think it's also like, dude, it's fine. Like because we just had the Wimbledon and. It got me thinking again about the whole. Yeah, it's fucking. But about the whole thing about how long the games are, because obviously in tennis also you don't know how long.
Jason's going to be on his fucking ass after.
No, it's not about format.
He's going to be.
He's going to have his. I'm just trying to get him drunk.
You want some milk?
Trying to get him drunk. You can see like you can't hear the baby anymore in the background. He's probably so tilted, he muted himself, went and screamed at his wife and child. It's like, I can't take this anymore. Both the screaming and the format talk. But no, it's like, and people still watch it. Obviously, that was the point. Like people come and they will sit there no matter how long it takes, because it's going to be like good, most likely, right? So I don't think that's like a massive problem when it happens. I think I'm lucky. I'm happy that ESL finally stopped fucking doing best of 5 finals for IM Dallas, and those tournaments. Just that should be best of 3, best of 5. Just keep it for Cologne and Katowice. Yeah, the championship level events, and
that's kind of cool though as well, right? that distinction to talk about. That's another thing I think is interesting. I know we're kind of have one toe in this format conversation, and I'm not about to dive into more. I'm talking broader, right? Just about the concept of different formats at different tournaments too. Like we've probably had this conversation before as well, but I would love it. Like this G8 event, it'd be great if they just pluck. You have a freeze frame, you pluck the best 16 teams in the world or whatever, you get them all out there for $1 million, single elimination, best of 3, bracket, bang, go, just like a gauntlet. Right? I think it's like old 80s and 90s fighting movies, to the death, and everything is mega intense in every single match. Like you either progress or you're out, right? There's no nonsense, nothing, and it'd be fun just to have different formats throughout. Like the game show one with the Godby FAC situation, right? Like that one there.
Teams have 3 lives.
Yeah, I don't know if we necessarily need stuff like that, but like things where we get to side, like that's why
is that the
best
format
of 3
for Gamers 8?
I don't know what the format is.
Format for Gamers 8 is a best of 3 or single elimination best of 3 bracket.
Wait, no, that's what I just said. It is
single elimination.
You mean double elimination?
Yeah, it's 16 teams single elimination bracket, as far as I know.
Have they put the format out there? It's not on HLTV.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the only thing that makes sense. It's a 4-day long event with 16 teams.
Isn't it 5 days?
16th
to the
16th
20th?
to the 20th, 5 days.
Okay, so you could be broken up into groups of 4. You could do some like classic GSLs, like old majors.
On Wikipedia,
I thought
it has a
a
single
BO3
elimination bracket in there.
Yeah, maybe that's where I got
Like
messed
round
up.
1, quarterfinals, semifinals, grand final. That's it. So you could just play one game and be done.
Okay, so it is the cutthroat for the millie.
Yeah, but that's not on HLTV, so they might just have that up as like a default thing. I don't know if that's actually true.
Okay,
But maybe that's just where I got it because I looked it up on Wikipedia the other day.
Either way, right? Like this is where, and I'm sorry. I want to apologize to everybody still on Gamer Legion, the organization. This isn't me dunking on you. This is just you guys, the ones left in this shit situation. Is like them getting pillaged and having their in-game leader and their star player taken from the team, but still having these invites to these tournaments. It's like kicking them while they're down, because they're going to go here with some replacements that it's going to be very difficult to fill the shoes of Shui and Ima, and they're going to go and probably get the shit kicked out of them by a couple of teams, and that's going to be that, and it's just going to feel fucking miserable.
I mean, dude, you're not going to have me, because I was like the one who was like talking shit about these teams at the major. I'm not going to go in and be like, oh, look at Gamer Legion was shit all the time. I mean, that would be super unreasonable, right?
Yeah.
Like when you lose good
Well, of
players. Like, so I don't expect that, but yeah.
No, I didn't mean us kicking them while they're down. Just the fact that they're like in this situation, right? For Isaac, Kioz, and Acor, they just like go have this awesome major run on this high, and then their best, like some of their best pieces from the team get taken, and now you have to go to an event where you're probably going to be understaffed and have to take on the fucking Goliaths. It's just not ideal. Like, you didn't do anything wrong. You did everything right. You played your best Counter Strike. You did what you could do, and then that's the end of the line. They have to start again now.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it sucks.
And they're the 6th best team in the world with 3 players right now. So cool, I guess. Do we want to? We've been going for over 2 hours, 2 hours 20 minutes.
Really?
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, we've been waffling on. What else have we got to do here? We got the Counter Strike still to watch.
I
Complexity.
feel like we missed something.
Well, we probably did. We can do. Well, oh yeah. When we get into Cologne.
I remembered one.
Oh
Just
yeah.
quickly.
Hit me.
The Neo coming in as coach for FaZe in
Oh
Cologne.
yeah.
Sure,
Yeah, I think.
Well, that's not official, is it?
yeah.
Like, he is doing it, but they haven't officially said it.
No, they've officially said it. It's
I
been
think
announced.
yeah.
Did they?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think. Well, first of all, I obviously don't know what's going on with suddenly like the Robin thing was a little bit sudden, and whatever. So that sucks for FaZe that it was a little bit out of left field, because now they've lost their analyst as well. He went to become a coach. Now they don't have a coach at this moment, so it's like probably a bit roughy, but it's Blast, so they're just going through it. But for Neo, I think when he was with us on FaZe, like, he's obviously an incredibly, he's a great guy, very smart, knows CS, and something that was his strongest suit as a caller, and when it comes to strategy and stuff, was this sort of like deeper level strategies, like the more not complex ones, but like the sort of like double fakes, like once you get map control right, have everything set up, like pulling people on a string a little bit, which unfortunately like didn't work great in practice because people are just running around. But like actually when it was like crunch time in some close games, right, when people are playing more passive and you're actually able to get map control without too many issues, those actually worked extremely well. And I think he also definitely like helped us a lot in like Nuke was one of our best maps, and it only happened after he was on the team, because that's when we really sort of understood the best way to play the map and approach. So I'm trying to say is like I think he could really help FaZe with some of that sort of stuff, and I think I can imagine him and Kerrigan will get along like well. They'll get along fine. I think the more question mark is about just like sort of people management and like different personalities on that team, and working also still with Brocky as a younger player, and some of those things that are not necessarily tightly related to Counter-Strike. Because another thing about Philip is he's a really nice guy and probably
I was going to say he's a very
probably a little bit
well-mannered gentleman.
Too nice. I saw there's one more guy who had the sort of same problem, if I can call it that, and that's Fallen, right? Where sometimes like you need to be more authoritative or like more outspoken, right? And
put your foot down,
exactly, and just be like, we're just doing it like this way. Or I mean, you don't want it to come to that. You just want it to like, so people not to question you too much or ask or give you like too many suggestions, but you give off that impression that you're always listening to stuff and you're welcoming it, so it's like a little bit your fault as well. So I think just on that department to sort of be assertive, right, when it comes in, which is going to be hard because those guys have been together for a long time, right? And they have their way of doing things and playing and practicing, and they've also, sure, they haven't won, they won Pro League, and then after that it's been a while, but they're also a team that's won a major, won a Grand Slam, right? Like they've had success before. So it's always tricky to come into a team like that, believe me. But I think it's a good call from FaZe to give him like because as far as I understood from Kerrigan's interview, it's like a bit of a trial. It's like it's not an immediate long-term deal. So I think that's like a great sort of gamble, to take on him and see how he will do.
That's what I was going to say, is it's hard to have like a concrete opinion on this, if it's just going to be for Cologne, if it's going to be for long term. I think there's differences, but it's definitely intriguing. And I mean, personally, I always have a little bit of like a nostalgia happiness seeing like one of the old guard kind of sticking around in some capacity in Counter-Strike. So I think it could be cool. Although I think I find it really hard. He's got like a really challenging task ahead of him, I think, where you have a team like FaZe that is so strong and so good, but seem to be just having, like, I guess I would still pin it on like communication problems that they kind of alluded to in Paris at the major, and just like they don't really feel like they're gelling as well as they used to be, and that's a really difficult problem to have to solve as a coach.
I did tell also, like, it's absolutely underrated what Robban was doing for that team and how much he helped, especially when it comes to the team atmosphere and so on. And remember, I told you guys my suggestion for this like months ago, like for FaZe,
Olaf, right?
It was Olaf as like sort of an assistant coach, because also he was good with some strategies, but probably too much for him to be like a full-on head coach. I don't know if that still could be the case, like for him to still come on. I'd like to see it. I think maybe even they're considering, maybe they're talking to him, after Neo, maybe try him out as well or something along those lines, because also he obviously has relationships with everyone on that team, I guess at this point, except maybe for Robs, and has played with people, and they're losing a big part of that camaraderie with Robban leaving. So maybe getting Olaf could help in that department.
I mean, it feels like they kind of like took that suggestion to a degree and just have a different player in the position, right? Like it almost feels like that's exactly what Neo is going to be, at least for the one event in Cologne, unless it gets extended to longer.
Well, yeah, like the concept Yanko was saying with Olaf, just branching out to Neo, right? So I suppose you can see, having played with them and all of that good stuff there. I don't know, like this stuff here, it's always going to be, you guys are being coaches. To me, it's still like a mystery. And I'm not saying a mystery like in a bad way. Like it's just the responsibilities of a coach are never just going to be like laid out publicly for everybody to see. Where like and the only result and the only job is going to be how the team looks and the results that they get. So it's one of these scenarios where you have an in-game leader like Carrigan as well, who gets such high praise about like what he does as a leader and how he runs his team and calling and everything like that, that it's also difficult for a coach in that position. Like this is what you're saying, Yanko, about Robin being like undervalued for what he was doing, or underrated for what you think he was doing with the team. Like those things are always going to be behind the fact that Carrigan is one of the best in-game leaders to ever do it, right? So there's always going to be that that shadow for a coach in the team, and there's always going to be that question of, how much are they doing, or is it just Carrigan? You even get that about like players who come in. Was Carrigan just micromanaging them around? Especially some of these guys who came and went with those shorter stints. But I think having somebody like Neo, who's extremely experienced and has been there, done it all, seen it all, being the nicer type of guy, this is the thing, right? But FaZe isn't like the normal culture of where most teams are heading right now, right? Like I feel like it's a lot more of it. Like even Liquid now, with this decision that they had from management to move away from this North American thing, like I don't know. I guess the playing body would have had something to say about that. But whereas I still feel FaZe is essentially still run by FaZe, like the players. Whereas a lot of these other teams, I feel that maybe some of the other decisions, like for Vitality, that's the perfect example, right? Like we've heard from a lot of people on Vitality, it's like, yeah, we understand, but it was the team's decision, more or less. I mean, does that feel like a fair?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Do you think there are more teams that are still like FaZe that are just team run, or do you think they're mainly org run now?
Mainly org run, I think, and then that's a good thing. FaZe is
good and a bad thing, I guess.
FaZe is pretty hands off. Like I think it gotten a little bit better in some departments, but we also had twists talking in interviews, right, or even in our podcast, actually, in our episode from Dallas, saying that they could probably use a little bit more help, like more support staff, whether it's a sports psychologist or whatever, right? Like, it gets tough being a lot on the road, and obviously you're always trying to win the tournament, and there are disappointments and whatnot. But I don't know if that will be possible. FaZe seems to be in a little bit of a rough spot as well as an org, right? So
I did think maybe that would happen in the break. Like maybe one of these bigger orgs that we were hearing about floating around Counter-Strike would come in and try and acquire them. But I imagine I
feel like,
do you want to wait?
That'd be so expensive.
No, yeah, I feel like we're not in those days where people would unless it was like someone like Falcons coming in and like being like, hey, we want you guys.
Here's all the money in the world. Yeah, come on over.
But you can tell, man, some of these orgs, you wonder what's going to happen. I mean, look at like the state of Fnatic and which players they ended up like getting, out of everyone. I don't think this is, I don't think they believe, Afro is the next big thing, right? Like, I mean, he's also...
They're just getting what they can get.
Yeah, they're getting what they can get. And that's pretty telling considering who they got, what they can get, which is sort of like, wow, Fnatic, isn't it like this massive org and multiple esports and so on and so forth, right? Shouldn't they have like a bigger budget available to them to attract some maybe better players? But, I think it's obvious from the roster that that's not the case. I'm not saying the guys are bad and they can't win some games, but this is definitely, I don't think this is a team you'll see become a contender.
It's also important. I think it also shows how important it is to like maintain a competitive team when you're coming up to changes like this, because it's really hard to attract people nowadays if you're having to sell them on like a rebuilding project. Like players want to join the teams that are going to be in position to win and be competitive pretty much out of the gate. So if you kind of slip out of that path, if you stray away from that too far before you make changes, then you have a harder time bringing in talent that can actually escalate you to that position. And that's the eternal curse of Fnatic, it feels.
But they're struggling still with the remnants, right? Of being so successful with a team that was team run, right? Like it was essentially like in the beginning when they came together, and then the changes they made and stuff. Like we know Devil Walk had a big, say in helping them get the change and bring Olaf and Crims in and everything like that. And then the team obviously, disintegrates eventually, which is going to happen to all great teams. And then you see now, well, there wasn't, who was the backbone of the team? Who were the decision makers? Who were the people who were, deciding the players? And then you kind of left in a pile of having to rebuild from there, and they've never really recovered from there. Yeah. Like, it has been this consistent story. Cloud9 could be that same conversation if they kept just trying to throw together these international type teams, or trying to plug a North American roster together with a couple of imports. They've completely reinvented themselves now by buying, what at the time was one of the best teams in the world. So, your options are, it's hard. Like, it's hard to build a team from scratch. It's hard to get all the pieces. then getting involved in the tournaments if you're not a big organization as well. But for teams like Fnatic and OG, who are, Fnatic is in the Louvre agreement and OG is a Blast partner team, like for them to be partner teams in these big events, but just kind of be, it's whatever. That's where I think the miss is. That's where it's like, if you want to be a partner team in the biggest Counter-Strike leagues in the world or tournaments in the world, then you would hope that there would be a bit more focus on producing a Counter-Strike team. But at the same time, maybe like we were talking about with ESL and Blast, Counter-Strike not being their number one priority, maybe that's the same with these organizations. Just the way we look at things is framed through the perspective that the only thing that matters is Counter-Strike. Because for us,
it is all that matters, right? Yep.
And should we end it on that note? The only thing that matters is Counter-Strike?
I like that.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice. Yeah? All right, cool.
Bang.
Peace.